right, we are live and in color. First time rocking the mic, Jake. How does it feel, buddy?
Feeling good, bud. Trying to figure all this stuff out on the fly.
Yeah, definitely. And we appreciate everybody that's going to be joining us and be patient with us because we're just giving today a test run. This is not the official start to Brags in the Stands. This is Jake and Greg working out the kinks. So we thought we'd bring you guys along in this little journey of ours here to try to figure this whole thing out. And I'm just retweeting stuff along so we can try to get some people to come hang out with us. And if you're in the chat room on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, please share some comments along. And Jake here will happily, post them. We'll
Yeah, I'll
be
throw
able
them
to
up.
bring them up. And
Keep
then
my eyes
we
peeled.
can talk about them. If you got a good point, we'd love to hear it. And so without further ado, now that we're starting to get a few people in here, like I said, I want to make sure I share it along on all the channels before we officially introduce ourselves, because we're new here, and there's a lot of different Facebook groups, and like I said, we're live on Twitter and YouTube as well. So was that Bear Mysterio I saw there? Pulled up on there. Oh, Barfly Tailgate. I like that. What's up? Appreciate you guys. I'm not sure which one's running the account there, but maybe it's Ryan Badgley, my good buddy. Last year we were at the Bears 100 celebration, and he was nice enough to offer me a. There we are. We got our guy Salim. Jordan Dynasty there. If you're following on Twitter. He's a great Bulls follow. He does the Bulls Gold podcast. He's a good buddy of mine. We're going to be bringing Salim on here once we figure out how to do all this stuff. And that's what today is all about, like I was saying before, is just us here trying to work out these kinks. We don't know what we're doing here. We're just trying to have some fun and talk some sports. So we figured, instead of our first show when we have all the big guests and the big names and have all the fun, and as we get a little closer to the season, let's work out the kinks today while everybody's talking about, the training camp just getting wrapped up, the 5th open practice. So we got a lot of stuff to cover. And then, of course, Twitter was taken by storm last night with Cubs Sox arguments and the whole L flag controversy. So we probably are going to touch on that at the very end.
Yeah,
so
we're definitely touching on that.
But we're going to get into all the Bears stuff first. So like I said, we're just sharing all this stuff along here on the Facebook and everything else. So, but again, just want to introduce everybody to my good buddy, my one of my best friends in the world, and my co-host, executive producer now of Brags in the Stands, my buddy Jake.
Rags.
Welcome.
What's up, everybody? How's
to
it going?
Bears Twitter, Jake.
Yeah.
I know you've always been kind of a spectator of Bears Twitter, but now that you're on Brags in the Stands, you're officially a part of, kind of the nonsense that I'm going to drag you into, and people, always coming at me hard, so you got to have my back.
I got your back, man. Yeah, I'm always in the sidelines. I don't really talk. I just use Twitter for news. Very seldom do you get a comment from me, but I guess that's going to change now.
I do the talking.
You do that for the three of us.
Yeah, that's what I try to do, So, yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to the season. I'm glad that they're attempting to, get football, off the railroad tracks and get going, or not on the railroad tracks and get going. So, it's just nice to be able to have football to talk about, training camp to talk about. No, we can't be there. Breaks my heart. There's no question about that. I've been going to training camp in Bourbonnais for the last 18 years, and in the last 10, I probably would go to every single camp, every single day. And Jake, who used to live in Northwest Indiana, the region, as we call it, he used to go to...
Region rats, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Show pride to the region love, baby, all day long. And Jake would always go to Bourbonnais with me I would drag him every single time, make sure. And even if it was a 7 a.m. practice, we were there front dead center in line and sitting 50-yard line on the bleachers. But now we can't even go to Bourbonnais anymore. It's probably apropos because, it got canceled with the pandemic anyway. So, but the Bears were already moving out of Bourbonnais. We were going to have an opportunity to go to Hallis Hall as fans. I've never been to Hallis Hall personally, so it's really a shame that we're not able to go. But now here we are, and, we've got a lot of different stuff to talk about. And the season rapidly approaching. We are 3 weeks from tomorrow, the kickoff of Bears Lions. So, it's exciting. It's an exciting time, And, that's why we want to, get going and have fun, get this thing, off and running. And we didn't want to wait around a couple more weeks and worry about all the, rust or all the little kinks that we got to work out before then. So we appreciate everyone joining us. And again, if you guys have any comments, please share them along. It'll add to the show. And, you never know. If you get us fired up enough, we might just bring you on the show. So that's what this is all about. Brags in the Stands. Still a Fans in the Stands show. That's who I am. That's who Jake is. We're not analysts here. We're the fans that go to the games just like you and me, or you and, Jake and everybody else that, just goes in the layman's eye. I'd never played football in my life, but I've gone enough to, I always say, you know it when you see it, so we don't all have to be, the football experts here to talk a little pigskin.
I am no expert by any means.
But we are going to be bringing on plenty of experts to make sure they get us right here. As we do our shows, we're going to bring on the people to make sure we are, on the right page. It's not going to just be Braggs ranting about his love for Mitch every day. I know that's a shocker.
No, it probably will be that to some degree.
It definitely will be that to some degree.
That's where we'll get some good arguments.
Especially if he ends up winning the job. So, that's going to be really interesting to see. But, and that's the conversation we're going to get into today. So I've just finished sharing all the Facebook groups. Yes, I am ranting because I am stalling. This is called stalling because
he's just rambling now.
I'm trying to juggle and walk and talk at the same time too. I can't do two things at once.
Don't worry about it.
I'm very ADD. So to be able to try to get this show off the ground and tweet out the show link and share it to all the Facebook groups. There's like 9 million Bears groups I'm a part of. So it's hard to keep it all in line and keep my head focused. But here we go.
Let's get into it.
We're going to break it down. Let's get right into it because, like I said, day 5 of Open Bears training camp practices just wrapping up. We just heard from Matt Nagy. We just heard from David Montgomery and Cody Whitehair. You're going to hear from Matt Nagy and some of the audio that some of you that just got done listening to the presser. We're going to go over some of his comments. We weren't able to capture anything from Cody and David Montgomery, unfortunately, but we're going to go over some of the thoughts that Matt Nagy had for practice today. So we'll just kick it off with the first video of Matt Nagy basically breaking down today's recap.
The monotony of camp, the periods that we have, we were able to get a lot of reps in. You saw we pulled back a little bit. We did about 5 or 6 kickoff returns. And then, once you do a lot of those, you want to save their legs a little bit. So we pulled back there. But I think it's the transition time, Dan, for just the player's mindset of going from a sideline back onto the field for a 4-play drive, back to the sideline, back to the field for a 9-play drive, and simulate some game situations. It's not perfect, but it just changes it up a little bit, and it allows us to script a little bit different too. So really, Ryan and I were just talking about it here on the walk back to the facility. You want to make sure that you're getting some great quality physical reps, mental reps while you're playing fast, but then you want to skate out of that thing as injury-free as you can, and I thought we did that.
It sounds like they got some 11-on-11 going on today. They did get a couple guys are injured, which we'll get into, but it sounds like they're starting to kind of get into the swing of things now as we roll into day 5.
Absolutely, and we're seeing some tweets from Adam Hogue and others that it was entire 11-on-11s for the whole practice. So Matt Nagy's really trying to dial them in. Again, we're only 21 days, 22 days away from kickoff, so he's got a little bit of a juggling act here to figure out who his quarterback's going to be, but get everybody else going, and to be splitting up the reps and trying to figure out, who's going to be playing when and with who, because you can't put all the first team guys with one quarterback and then not with the other. So they're splitting them with the first and the second team, which limits them even more. So the big question to me is, and I wish it would get asked, try to really, and maybe Matt's not going to give it away, but I'd love to know in Matt's ideal world what a time frame or amount of days he is comfortable with letting the first string quarterback that he chooses prepare for week 1 versus Detroit. It's got to be more than 10 days, in my opinion. So if it
You think
is,
so?
then the clock is ticking. We had a full 11 on 11s today. So next week I expect fully that we're going to see that, not just a live practice, but a full out scrimmage like you saw last year, before the season started. And that's going to be maybe the determining factor on who gets the job. I don't know. But, it's almost impossible for Matt Nagy to truly get this team ready to play until he makes this decision. But you don't want to rush it because it's a big one.
Well, look, I mean, this offseason's totally rushed in a way. I mean, everything's been kind of just accordion together really quickly. Someone's got to separate themselves. I don't know if that's happening yet, but, in order to really start giving that guy the reps and make that decision, someone's going to have to really step up and make that difference. And, from the sound of it, we got a little bit from Nagy today about Mitch that seemed a little more exciting than I've heard him, I think, in every single one of these pressers.
It's the first time he gave him a little cookie crumb,
Yes,
in
he
these
did.
first
We'll get into that in a minute.
5 days, he's been getting all these leading questions like, hey, Mitch is looking a little better, and he won't take the bait. And Sylvie, I'm always calling into the Waddle and Sylvie show because I got to argue with my guys, especially my boy Tom Waddle, on this subject. I've been fighting with him, for 3 years now about Mitchell Trubisky, and it started with Mike Glennon. But Sylvie's sitting there like, picking apart every little negative comment when Matt Nagy's set up to say something nice about Mitch. And I, obviously I'm trying to, finesse my thoughts into, well, how, what's the rationale here? Is it, he hates Mitch? Or could it possibly be that he's just trying to impose a new attitude? Because in my opinion, when you went to training camp last year, and I went to every open practice except for one last year, they dialed back camp and preseason so much from the first year that I think that Matt's just trying to enforce a new attitude. And he's not going to take these new softball questions where he can line up and throw rose blossoms at everybody's feet. He got burned on that last year. It worked his first year because everybody was excited to be there and show Matt Nagy who they are, and he's trying to show them who he is. So he goes to camp and there's this attitude and energy and swag, and everybody's trying to step up. And then last year, you wouldn't have expected the way they ended the season with the Cody Parkey double doing. But you get to training camp, and there was so much hype after the Bears 100 celebration, and the team didn't make too many changes. So the assumption was they were going to be able to take the next step. And unfortunately, like I said, they dialed back training camp so much and preseason. It went from in the first preseason in 2018, he had 5, 6, 7 live sessions during open practices that I witnessed. I have video of it. The second year, last year, he only had one live session on one day of the 11 open practices, and that was the infamous David Montgomery run where he bowls over 4 or 5 guys. And I was worried at that point. We get to the third preseason game against the Colts, and he doesn't play the starters, and I'm sitting there like, we got Green Bay in 2 weeks. It was a mistake. Hindsight's 20/20, but Matt Nagy admitted as much about not having his guys ready to play. You want to talk about the step back that Mitchell Trubisky took in 2019, you can point to the point of emphasis they took at training camp and preseason. It all plays into that. It plays into how the offensive line looked, plays into how the running game never came together, and everything else. Would you been able to save the tight end position? Probably not. You can't put a player there that doesn't exist. That's why they brought in Cole Kmet and Jimmy Graham, who sound like they're having a great training camp.
Yeah, it sounds like they're having a good,
But this
really
year,
good camp.
Matt Nagy is trying to enforce a new attitude. So today, yes, Jake, we got our first positive quote that he was willing to give. All the beat writers, the J.J. Stankovitz, the Adam Hogue, the Dan Wieters, and take that little quote and run with it and do what you want with it. And some people are going to post puff pieces, and some people are going to try to dissect it and say, well, this, that, and the other. Even in the audio that you're about to hear with some of the stuff where he talks about Nick Foles, the writers are coming up with thoughts like, well, hey, Nick hasn't been here in a while, and there's caveats you can make for everybody. Bottom line is somebody's got to step up here. So that's how quarterback competitions are decided. We've been through them how many times in this city? This is my third quarterback competition. Personally, I don't get to see it. This would have been probably the best one to see. Rex Grossman, Kyle Orton.
I remember sitting out in front of your house and talking about how much I was hoping Grossman would win the competition over Orton at one point in time.
Absolutely.
That's how long we've been talking about
Went to
this.
Champaign, Illinois. They were still playing in Champaign his first year, and he came in a fourth quarter of a preseason game and led him on a game-winning drive. And it was like, that's it. We got our guy. But hey, he got us to the Super Bowl. So, to continue on with some of Matt Nagy's thoughts, he was asked after his recap, when are these guys gonna be ready?
Minimal amount of injuries as possible, but I just like the mentality that we had. That's a great start right there.
Cheryl Ray, go ahead.
Coach, you said earlier in the week you want to get this team get the calcit going, get toughened up. How close are they? And when do you think they'll be at that point where they'll be ready for the season?
Yeah, Cheryl. Today was probably a start. I'm learning through this deal with the newness of the schedule, the newness of the rules of what we can and can't do. And then again, I'm going to continue to go back to, every team right now is dealing with 80 players instead of 90. And so you have 10 less players. So rep wise, there's a little less as you go. So you got to have a real good pulse with the team. Being calloused is certainly something that we talked about. We have to have. We have to be mentally tough, and we got to be physically tough. You got to be smart when you're doing the physical stuff. Today was a start. Next week will be another challenge for us where we might sprinkle a little live in there again, and certainly have some longer type practices. But we're going to keep a pulse on these guys. I'm going to listen to where they're at. And as long as we get quality reps, that's really all minimal.
Yeah.
That was there's been some really interesting stuff from Matt Nagy the last couple of days of him breaking down basically how they approach training camp. And the reps specifically has caught my interest, piqued my interest, so to speak, because he talks about how they have to split the reps and how that's a challenge, and not only split the reps, but split the reps with who they're repping with. And I think that really is interesting dynamic for him to try to break down. But on top of that, he talks about fatigue at practice. And that's something I never really thought about when I went to practice. They're there for 2 hours. I kind of take for granted. These guys are world-class athletes. They play 60, football games that are, it's like 4 hours at the stadium, but really they're only running around for how long? They're not running around for the 4 hours. I might be running around the stadium for 4 hours. But they're not. But at training camp, you're running around constantly. You're doing all these different drills, 1-on-1s, 7-on-7s, 11-on-11s, off the field, on the field, to the field 4, to field 2, this way, individual drills. And so I've never really thought about that fatigue and how you truly evaluate a rep that's in like the second hour of practice as opposed to the first. And there's Barbara Graham's first comment of the day. Barbara Graham, for those of you who don't know, is the general, also known as my mother. So we love you, Mom. Thank you for your support and joining us today on a beautiful Saturday afternoon here for myself. How's the weather out in Austin, Texas, Jake?
It's good. It's hot, but it's good. I mean, I think it's always hot. Another side of the coin there is your off-season program is just almost non-existent. Guys need to be coming in excellent shape. And then, so you got to factor in, like you're talking about, fatigue with these guys, bringing them along slowly. You got a couple injuries starting to pop up here. Like you just got to be smart. It's the most probably bizarre offseason in NFL history right now. So it's just everything's a factor. And of course, he's saying the right things. They're trying to do the right things. I mean, I guess the benefit there is every single team is going through a crazy offseason like this. I mean, the Bears elected to not really have too much for preseason last year when other teams did. Now nobody has one. So it's going to be a factor for all these teams.
It's a killer. It's a killer for the Bears specifically because of all the years and the one team there, and every team I think needs preseason. That was proven out, by the Bears last year. If you got guys like Tom Brady and Russell Wilson playing 3 preseason games, Mitch can get out there and get some work. Nick Foles can get out there and get some work.
Right.
But this year, as I said before, Matt Nagy was going to take an entirely different approach to training camp and preseason. Now with this whole pandemic, he's been thrown a curveball. I mean, even when he a couple months ago knew that the pandemic was happening, he still didn't really know how training camp was going to unfold. So you're literally approaching this day to day. Each day brings a new challenge, I'm sure. And so it's almost impossible for him. But it's such a shame because we were gonna see 3 preseason games of Mitch versus Foles, where we would have been able to properly evaluate who's looking better, and we wouldn't have to rely so heavily on the beat writers, and we could just see it for ourselves because it is a you know it when you see it kind of thing. And if Nick Foles is this guy that just runs the offense so much easier than Mitch because he reads the field, so be it. But I want to see it personally, and we can't, and that's a really frustrating thing, and it kills me for Matt Nagy because I know he was going to just, really, really put these guys to the grindstone and do it the right way because he's talking about callousing them up and getting them ready. I know he learned his lesson from last year. When he talks about calloused up, he knows how soft they were to start the season, mentally or whatever. They just weren't in the same dialed in approach. Now every team is going to be coming off, no preseason, no training camp. So it's an even playing field in that sense. Last year, you're going up against teams that might have approached preseason differently. So it's going to be interesting at the very least, but so many different obstacles. And, as you mentioned, then you have injuries. And so that's the next clip is some of the injuries Matt Nagy, had to report to all the beat guys today.
Can you give us an update on Allen Robinson and Akeem Hicks?
Yeah, so Allen has an ankle yesterday in practice, so we're just keeping an eye on that, and he should be okay. But it just was it didn't make sense to try to push him out there today, so we're okay with that. And then the same thing with Hicks. He has the quad, and he's day to day, and it's just for us, we thought that was the best thing to do, which it was.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, at this time of year, that's the thing. I mean, we're talking about guys getting into camp, getting ready, and getting them calloused and all that stuff. But at the same time, like we said, you got to bring them along slowly. You don't have much time, but you can't be having these injuries popping up. It's so easy for someone to pull a hammy or anything like that without proper conditioning. And so anything could happen with these guys. You got to be smart. It was Allen with an ankle. Akeem's got a quad. Jimmy Graham had a rest day today. He touched on Anthony Miller for a second, said he got banged up, but should be okay. And then also said Jason Spriggs, who's competing for that swing tackle position, he's got a knee, and we don't know what's going on with that. And that's the O-line, man. You don't want to be losing guys there at all because they are thin as it can be.
I see.
There you go. You were off.
God,
I was trying to give you the little indicator.
Because I hit the mute on the screen, but I didn't hit it on the damn mic.
Damn technology.
I hit it on the mic while you're playing the video. Then I forget to hit. See what I mean? It's trying to walk and chew gum at the same time. And, I've got 2 different mutes on the screen. And
this is the test run.
So,
that's what it's
then
for.
It screws me up. That's what the test run is for.
That's what the test run's for.
The injuries are definitely something, that is a delicate thing this close to the season. So Allen Robinson, and Akeem Hicks obviously is probably the one that gives me more concern at this point just because, he's a big body and you don't want to see any type of injury for any player, but he just seems like he's been through a lot of injuries and, he's a veteran. So you already don't have Eddie Goldman in the middle there. So it's vital that he stays healthy this season if the Bears truly want to attempt to make a Super Bowl run in any capacity. And Allen Robinson obviously falls into that category too, but it didn't sound like Matt was as concerned with that. Anthony Miller, it's frustrating for him, man. He's had the shoulder injuries last year. They put him back on kickoffs in the last game of the year, and he hurts his shoulder. Not a move they probably should have put him in, and now he's, trying to come along slowly this year at training camp. So you worry about, what banged up means, but hopefully it's nothing, so he can continue to take steps because Anthony Miller was a guy last year in the second half of the season that really started to turn it on and, can take a lot of, the slack off of what Allen Robinson does for this team. So I'm not too worried about Allen. He's pretty tough, and if Nagy, just wants to be precautious this close to the season. But, a lot to consider and probably too many problems for Matt Nagy that he wants to handle. But what are you going to do? Like I said, every team's up against this. So, it's the cards you're dealt.
It's a unique year. It's just how it rolls.
Absolutely. You're just hoping you can have as many people healthy as you get there. Luckily, what we haven't seen so far in relation to injury or guys not being available, when baseball was first starting to get going, they were really fumbling with their protocols on how players enter and exit facilities and, testing and things of that nature. I can remember Chris Bryant being like, look, they tested us on Saturday, and then 5 days later was the next time I got a test, and I've been here, all week. We need to be ramping this up way more to, ensure my safety. And one thing we haven't seen so far with the NFL, with all these practices starting up, and what are we, a week in? Some of them longer. We haven't seen a story yet from an NFL team that players have gotten COVID and can't practice. We're still seeing it trickle around baseball. There's teams that have to suspend a game here or there. The Cardinals, St. Louis Cardinals had the whole team, break out, and they had to shut down, their whole baseball operations for 2 weeks. But we haven't seen any of that here with the NFL yet. So that gives me, a sense of hope that the NFL is going to do this right and we're going to get a season in place.
I hope so. Once people start traveling, it's going to be a big tell if they have it under control. Right now, everybody's at camps. They're in their environments. They're staying decently isolated. But
you would just think a numbers game, though, that one person would have come across it. But so that tells me that they've got
had
good
a few
protocols.
cases. I think they've had a few cases. I just don't think it's been in the situation to really shut anything down or anything like that.
I know some guys had some coming into from the off season, like Andrew Whitworth, I believe, from the Rams might have had it. If I'm not mistaken, maybe I need to be careful about saying that. But I know a few guys in the offseason had, but I don't know if I've heard anybody specifically yet from the last few days or since camps have started. But, I'm only following the Bears because I need to know who our quarterback's going to be.
There you go.
But, back on to, some more of Matt Nagy and what we heard from him at this press conference. A storyline that started to trickle out from Bears Twitter or Bears, whatever, in the last year were people starting to get a little critical of Khalil Mack's, output. How much, how many sacks should he get in a year for his year to be considered successful? Because some people were starting to feel like because the sack numbers weren't there that maybe he wasn't doing as much as he was in 2018. And there's a lot of different people, Phil Latosha, Draft Dr. Phil, he's one of the first guys that would lose his mind anytime anybody would even dare suggest that Khalil Mack isn't putting out, 100% effort on every single play. He's a guy that, he would show me on his Tape Never Lies segments like, hey, this guy's got 3 guys on him at all times. Like I said, I'm just a fan. So, it's easy for me in the stands when a guy's not making plays to sit there and say, come on, step it up. You're not doing enough. But when you actually sit there and watch the tape and you see that, the rest of the line isn't, getting the pressure, and so they're able to shift all the blockers towards Mac, like I said, it's hard for a fan to maybe not see that, but, Khalil Mack isn't necessarily not putting out the effort that maybe some fans feel just because the numbers aren't there, and Matt Nagy was asked about that, and these were his thoughts.
Khalil Mack, his sack total dipped a little bit last year. I know Chuck has talked about it, about how he does other things that don't necessarily always reflect in the stats. What you've seen from Khalil, what are your expectations from him? And does it sense to you that he wants to rebound from last year or just continue doing what he's been doing?
Well, Larry, so for Khalil, everyone always goes to the numbers with really all players. And when you have a lot of sacks in your career like he does, that's what people evaluate off of. But I can tell you firsthand from going against Khalil and other great pass rushers, we look for the sacks, but we also look to see how much are you affecting the quarterback. And then every team that we play is going to have to game plan for him. So you guys know that. You've seen that now for 2 years. And the only thing that matters is Khalil ready to rock and roll? And he certainly is. Just from the talks and discussions, he's had an unbelievable off season. He's very, very focused. He doesn't say much. He's not a guy that says a whole lot, which you like, you appreciate. It's who he is. So he does his speaking on.
It's, one of the comments, I mean, the question is saying, do you think he wants to rebound from last year is very funny to me. I mean, come on, it's Khalil Mack.
You wonder why Khalil Mack is so pissed off from what people are saying.
Do you think he wants to do better than he did last year? I would say so. I mean, look, it's Khalil Mack at the end of the day. I mean, it's premier.
But the word
pass
rebound
rusher.
is to infer that he's had a bad year. And
right.
I think that he would definitely take offense to that.
That's fair. And there were times when you were wondering where he was at. There was times he was getting eaten up by an OT by himself, and you were thinking to yourself, well, what's going on here?
It's easy to be a meatball fan and say, hey, everybody, it's like when you're talking about the quarterback position. Hey, Mitch, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have good offensive line. He should do it too. Well, Khalil Mack, I can hear fans in the stands now. Hey, other guys got to deal with multiple blockers. Take them down. And Bears fans, they get spoiled by it. We got some video to really emphasize what Khalil Mack can do at times, but he's not what he can do every play or what you shouldn't expect him to do. But just to give you a little idea of the tenacity and the ferociousness of Khalil Mack, he is able to take on multiple blockers to get to the quarterback. But that isn't something you want to rely on every play, because then he's you want Robert Quinn and Akeem Hicks and these other guys to be getting to the quarterback too. So, but that being said, Khalil Mack is capable of amazing, athleticism. And this is the video to kind of give you that example. The sack by Mack, a beautiful thing. That is absolutely what you're looking for. And maybe we'll play that again, because watch how he goes through literally 3 guys to get to Matthew Stafford. Get ready, Matt Stafford, if you're watching. I know there's a good chance Matt Stafford might be watching, because my good buddy and neighbor Adam Gray, he's a Lions fan. I know he's sharing the show along, and maybe Matt's watching right now. And this is what you have to look forward to, Matt, here in a couple weeks with Khalil Mack, your good buddy, being able to go through just about anybody you put in front of him. But just watch how he bull rushes with one arm, swim moves. His swim moves the first guy, then bull rushes the next guy. It's just a sight for sore eyes and worth a second look.
Spoiled. We were spoiled that year. I mean, he was superhuman that year, so you're expecting that every time. And he is superhuman, but
he's capable of that at any time in a football game, and that's why you trade for him, and that's why you give the deal you gave to the Raiders to get him, because he's able to change a game on one play at any given moment. If the left tackle for 1 second sleeps on that dude, he's going to get around you and get the ball out, because that's another thing that we saw maybe more in 2018, was able to get that ball out of the quarterback's hands. But, I definitely think this year, turnovers are a finicky thing. You can't count on the same number every year. But, more than likely, it's a law of averages. If he didn't get the numbers that you were looking for last year, there's a good chance he's going to get them this year by hook or by crook. But, as, our buddy Brandon here in the chats, asking how much, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much will we miss Leonard Floyd? I mean, I don't think the scale's going very high there, because they were able to replace him with Robert Quinn, and the idea there is that Robert Quinn is an upgrade. So, like I said, not only can you expect Khalil Mack to make those plays on his own, but now if you add more to the defensive pressure up front, he's going to get more opportunities to get loose with blockers going to the other side of the line to try to protect Robert Quinn, a veteran defensive end who's played with the Rams and the Cowboys. The guy can make plays. Is he past his time? I don't know. We're going to find out here in a couple weeks. I'm hoping he's of the Alex Brown type of defensive end mold, a veteran type that you bring in who dominates. That Alex Brown was a great defensive end for years. I'm not sure their style of play is similar. I just want the same kind of productivity, because, at the end of the day, that's what fans want. They want the production. They want the numbers. They want the sacks. They want the touchdowns. There's more to it to win a football game, but that's what we want. So hopefully, with all this going on, I don't think Mac.
I'm not worried about Mac.
We have to worry about
no,
Khalil Mack.
Don't need to worry about Mac.
No.
I think the defense will be great. If you're gonna get Hicks into the mix for it, what did we get him for last year? 5 games, I think.
Yeah.
He was out 11 games last year, I believe. I mean,
their
that's
defense changed so much.
You're already gonna lose.
Almost the instant Akeem
Right.
Hicks came out in London. I'm sitting in the stands in London with my guy George Berlissimo. If you guys don't know Berlissimo, he took me to the game in London against the Raiders. One of the greatest experiences I've ever had at a Bears game. Even though they lost, I still say that, and it was incredible. But the minute Akeem Hicks came out with that busted elbow, from the tenaciousness of Khalil Mack on friendly fire contact, their defense changed, like a blink of an eye. It's like flipping a switch. And
he's not one of those guys you can replace.
Right. That's what worries me about this
year.
Is, Eddie Goldman, I can't remember who it was, but somebody was saying, Eddie Goldman's probably the least important guy on the defense. I don't know if I agree with that. I don't really know how to rank these guys. I'm not going there. Eddie Goldman is, has been a stable force in the middle of there. Now you don't have that. And Akeem Hicks has had injury stuff, and then you want him to stay healthy all season. But in football, that's not likely, especially when you're in the trenches. So now, what do? You got to make sure Akeem Hicks stays healthy, because that's what's going to affect, Khalil Mack's, output numbers. That's the guys you got to look at. So,
right.
It's going to be interesting. But no, Khalil Mack, not a concern, as you could see in the video. And that's what we want to try to do here at Brags in the Stands. I love going to the games, and this has been really hard on me, ever since March 12th, 2019 was the day they announced sports were canceled pretty much across the board, or 2020. And of course, how could I forget 2020? It just feels like we've been doing this for a year now with this pandemic, and it's hard. I, haven't been able to go to any games. I'm like trying to sneak on rooftops in Wrigleyville with my mask on and like socially distancing just to get a little eye peek into the Wrigley field. But these videos are kind of what I want to incorporate into this show, kind of show you the eyes view of what the fans in the stands are looking at. And that's kind of how I've always been, and pride myself as being a fan that goes to the games, has fun. If you're a fan that likes to go to the games, I love to meet people and interact with them, and that's what this show is going to be all about, is kind of showing you that experience at the games, the people we're hanging out with, and what we're doing. Hell, sometimes we might even go live while we're at the games. You never know. So, we hope that you're stay with us on this journey. Today is just the test run of Brags in the Stands. We got, Jake did such an amazing job with this graphic that he made. Jake does graphic design, as his work, and he does amazing stuff. I don't want to give away, Jake, do you want to tell people what you do for a living?
I do graphic design. That's what I do.
You do graphic design. Yeah. I don't want to give away exactly who you work for, but he does cool.
No point.
I'll just leave it at this. He does cool graphic design work for a really cool company. So for me to be able to have his work, on the show, professional design, it's very, very humbling, and you did an incredible job with that. But that's what we're doing here. We're just trying to test run this, get the graphics out there, do a few videos, and test run this. So when we get ready to officially launch Brags in the Stands in a couple weeks, right before the season kicks off, we give you guys a great product. So again, we hope you follow along with us on the journey. Today's the start, and we appreciate everyone joining in. And don't be shy in the chat. I'm not able to see the chat, right now, because I don't want to be distracted from YouTube or Twitter. But yeah, these guys are all chattery, Jake, on Twitter. As you can see. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. All these guys, I get a lot of crap on Twitter, and then all of a sudden we're all quiet. We get all quiet when the show starts. So I see how it is.
I don't want to distract you. I don't want to throw up too many things. And
no, I like the comments. We love,
all right.
We love the comments. Anytime any posts on, unless it's a terribly stupid comment. But
these are all brilliant comments.
We only got the best comments.
This is a great point here, and what we were talking about to get on Floyd, him not being on the field, currently, that is an issue. You haven't heard too much about it. They've been talking about working him in slowly. Maybe that's a mental thing. I don't know. Hopefully, it's not a conditioning thing or a physical thing. But that's a great point. He needs to be on the field and he needs to be working himself in because he's going to be, his production is going to be absolutely huge for this team. If he can, I mean, what you were getting out of Floyd, I mean, you have great athleticism out of Floyd. He could drop back. He was good in coverage when asked to do that. His sack numbers weren't there. His physical strength wasn't always there. Something you can get out of Robert Quinn. You're hoping that's the difference maker. You're hoping Robert Quinn can put up 8 to 10 sacks in a season. You should be able to get that out of a guy like that. And him not being on the field early, it's just, with such a short offseason, he needs to be out there. He needs to be in the mix. And maybe he was today. I didn't see that he wasn't, but he needs to get out there.
Oh, I did it again. See, I'm going to owe $1 every time I do this.
Don't
But
even hit it.
yeah, well, it's hard because I breathe heavy. If I don't hit it, then when you're talking, I'll
Everyone
start
loves
really
to hear you breathe.
concentrating on what
That's
you're
the-
saying,
that's
and then
the
I'll be
best
like,
part.
so I got to make sure, we
Control
keep
your
it nice
breathing.
and crisp, especially when you hit your stride like that and you start giving people your knowledge because, again, Brandon, we appreciate the questions and we'll try to help you as best we can. But going forward, we want to try to bring analysts on too because, we don't have all the answers here. We're going to give you our opinion and you can take it for what it is. But, to truly inform our fans, we're going to make sure we bring on the right kind of guests to get you informed, even if I don't agree with them, cough, cough, Tom Waddle, cough, cough. So
He'll be on, I hope.
yeah, exactly.
Any
all the
comments you're getting out of me is completely
he ain't
unprofessional.
getting out and
So,
argue with me
yeah.
about Mitch. You know that he might, he can hang up on me on ESPN 1000, whenever they want, even though they're very gracious with letting me rant away and cry as everyone's. I don't know if I've been. I can't tell you how many times in the last 3 days I've been told that to quit crying. I don't cry. I talk emotionally loud. Okay, I'm not crying. Quit telling me I'm crying. It's just how I talk. I'm a little emotional. Sometimes I cry. I cry maybe like 6 times a year. It's okay to cry.
It's okay to cry.
It's
That's what kind of
okay to
show
cry.
this is. We get our feelings and we put them out into the
Cry, and
open.
everything else. Exactly.
I've known Greg for almost 30 years, I'd say. Probably, right?
That's
I've
right.
seen him cry several times. He's
Several.
he's he's a very sweet man. He's emotional. He wears his heart in his sleeve.
Exactly.
But you know
I'm
what?
the extremes of everything.
But if Greg didn't cry, if he didn't let that out, I would be scared for the world of what he would do if he repressed it all, because I don't know what would happen. So it's a good thing that he lets it out.
I certainly was crying after the last Bears game we went to, but I digress. So to move on.
This is a good question from Chubbs. I think you need to address this one.
Well, see, because somebody brought this up.
Oh wait, that's not the one. I'm sorry,
Chubbs.
not Chubbs. I'm sorry. Here we go. This is the one I
Will I
wanted.
cry if Mitch isn't the starter? I'll definitely be upset. Like people say, "Oh, who are you rooting for here?" And we can get into that here in a little bit. But I'll definitely be upset. I like Mitch. I'm rooting for him to work out. So if he doesn't work out, that means the core of what was the 2018 Bears that started in 2017 with Eddie Jackson, Tariq Cohen, and Mitchell Trubisky coming in and breathing new life into this organization. And then, 2018 was one of my favorite years as a Bears fan. Rivals up with the 2006 season when we went to the Super Bowl. It's neck and neck with that. So, these guys hold near and dear to my football fan heart. So if Mitch doesn't work out and we've moved on to Nick Foles, I'm going to be upset. Will I cry? I don't know. I can't tell you till the moment.
Well,
now,
we'll see.
The other comment in there was
we'll bring it to you live.
Chubbs, who I love. Chubbs was making way too much sense on Twitter yesterday. It was pretty astounding watching, because we're getting through the psychology of, people that want to detract what Mitch is doing and others that are, positive about what Mitch is doing and the psychology behind that. And some of the people that are like kind of have been so out on Mitch for months and saying they're ready to just get rid of him, cut him. Hey, we already got a guy and all this stuff. Now we've gotten to camp and it might look like, Mitch might get the week 1 nod. It's like, well, hey, I just want whoever's best. Yeah, no kidding. We all want whoever's best. Can we all stop saying that, please? Like, I don't understand why we have to qualify ourselves by saying we all want what's best for the Bears. If you're a Bears fan and you don't want what's best for the Bears,
I don't want
that's the stupidest thing. The only times I'm ever like that as a fan, or when I want them to like lose out at the end of a season so I can get a good draft pick for the team. That's the only time I'm rooting against them to not don't screw this up and win some games so we can drop down and get, Aaron Donald. Remember everybody freaking out because we were one pick short from Aaron Donald. We ended up with Kyle Fuller, who's worked out, another guy after his 4th year that Bears fans were ready to deem a bust, and here he is, an all-pro cornerback. So, you just never know how guys are going to develop. But
And hey, you know what? They denied Kyle his 5th-year option, I believe.
Exactly.
If I'm correct.
Absolutely.
He stepped up. He balled out.
Right.
Got
It
a
was
big contract.
different under circumstances because he was injured and had poor performance. It was more of a twofer. But Mitch has had his injuries too. But both didn't get their 5th-year option picked up. Kyle was able to stay on the team, so you never know. But it's just. You just don't, I forget the first point I was making because now I got off topic with the damn 5th-year option stuff. But, we'll roll on to the
next test run.
Exactly. But no,
let's move on.
Exactly. So, as I was saying before, we're moving on to more of what Matt Nagy had to say and some of the thoughts he had coming from the press conference. And they dove a little bit into the run game and how David Montgomery's looked because we really haven't heard that much about the run game with all the concentration being on the quarterbacks and the passing situation.
Montgomery, and maybe any changes you see from him this camp compared to last camp?
No changes, Kevin. The biggest thing with him is probably his confidence. Last year, coming in as a rookie, I think his expectations were set really high, which you love. And then you go through a season that we went through last year, and there can be frustrations at times. But I'm just trying to be the best mentor and coach that I can be to him. We have a wonderful relationship. We have a lot of respect for each other. And I like the way that he handles his day-to-day operations. He realizes how important he is to this offense. I love his mentality. He's a hard worker, and I think he's eager to really go out and show what he can do. And he understands that this thing's a marathon, and he really has a lot of respect for that part. So we just keep building on our relationship and just talking through where we're at. But I'm really excited to see what he does this year.
Now, that's a guy that I'm really excited to see this year is David Montgomery. I mean, you've seen a lot. You've seen him kind of working in the offseason. There was some stuff on Twitter. You'd see him kind of working out, watching some of his footwork. He looks like he's in great shape. That's one guy I'm not too concerned about conditioning wise. I think he's ready to go. Whether the O-line's up to the task, whether Matt Nagy's up to the task to actually call a intelligent run game, that's another question for another day or maybe now. But I feel like he's got a good season ahead of him if people can help him out. I don't think he made the best out of a bad situation last year. I thought.
Absolutely.
I think he had for a 3rd-round pick coming in, he had a good season. I like having a guy like that in the running back room. Absolutely.
Well, just as much as we harp on, it's not all on Mitch because of the offensive line. I mean, David Montgomery obviously is affected by how the offensive line shook out last year, and they had their struggles, obviously, blocking up the run. You kind of saw some different comments, maybe from Kyle Long on ESPN 1000 or different guys kind of saying, well, we want to run more power, but we weren't getting those calls. And then you saw in press conferences post-game last year where Matt Nagy only called 7 run plays, and he's asked why. He's sitting there like, hey, I 5 yards, 2 yards, 3 yards. You see a commonality here. He's trying to say he couldn't run the ball, but you got to get your guys in line, and you're not obviously they weren't coaching them up right because they got their offensive line coach out of here and brought in Juan Castillo. And the biggest thing to me is Matt Nagy not knowing who is on his offensive line. How do you expect continuity on a run blocking scheme if you're changing out your center and your left guard and your right guard? You've got, Rashad Coward doing his best. A former defensive lineman converted to an offensive lineman. You've got Kyle Long, who admitted as much on ESPN 1000 in the last few months on David Kaplan's show that he shouldn't have been out there. And he got benched by week 5, after the London game, and he admitted as much. Well, that's on the coach to know that in the preseason. If you recall the preseason big-time scrimmage of the Bears versus Bears that they did last year, if you recall, at the end of the practice, that was when Kyle Long got in that that fight with the defensive lineman, and he ripped his helmet off, and I guess the reports where he threw up on the football field or some crazy stuff like that.
As you do when you rip a helmet.
As you do, well, you're getting worked up and you're a big guy, you gotta let it all out. But when you see that stuff, I'm pretty sure the coach has got to sit there and evaluate. And if he had gone harder, this goes back to going harder on these guys at camp and preseason, you might have known, hey, Kyle Long doesn't necessarily have it anymore, unfortunately, as much as we love the guy and his tenure with the Bears. And hey, maybe James Daniels and Cody Whitehair shouldn't be in the spots that they are. How many weeks did it take him to change Cody back to center? A center and a quarterback, there's a lot of trust involved there. And for all the talk about Cody Whitehair's snapping issues, the trust between Mitch and Cody is the most important thing. I'm pretty sure Mitch is like the godfather of his kids. So they have ultimate trust. So obviously that connection, that continuity is going to be better. The word with James Daniels was that he wasn't loud enough. He couldn't get the calls out.
He's 20 years old too. I mean, he's a young guy. You thrown him into starting center position in National Football League at 20 years old. That's a tall order. You know what I mean? So if he wasn't ready, he wasn't ready, and that's on them to know better. And
or have just started him at center from the start of his career.
Right.
Switch him 2 years in a row. But all of that, kind of makes how good David Montgomery is going to be. Is he going to get 1,400 yards this year? Well, that depends on how well the offensive line, their scheme, and what they're doing running, and how successful Matt Nagy is calling plays. It's not all just on David Montgomery, just like it's not all on Mitch. So just people think that when I'm always just ball washing Mitch, it's not all on Mitch. It's not all on David Montgomery. When I say that, does anybody accuse me of ball washing David Montgomery? No, they don't, because there's not some huge heated argument behind it. We can all look at it and talk about the nuance of what it takes to have a successful season as a running back without it being about, oh, you love this guy and you want to marry him and all this weird stuff.
But you do want to marry him.
I do want to marry the Chicago Bears.
To touch on Whitehair and James Daniels for a minute, I didn't hear Whitehair's press conference, but I did see a tidbit where he did talk about James Daniels moving really well, moving guys really well. So that's something you want to hear. I mean, if they can anchor, if those two positions can be solid, that's big. That's real big.
Absolutely. And we have a video, but we also have the last screenshot I sent you, Jake, was a great quote, and it'll show whoever. Can't remember who I screenshotted. I think it was Zach Pearson. So you were talking about some of the new diet habits that David Montgomery has gotten into, and it was a quote. I wish we had this video because it's a great quote. If you wouldn't mind pulling up, it's the last screenshot I sent you. And nope, that's not it. Try again. Nope, that's not it.
Come on, man. What is this?
Well, maybe I shouldn't just tell you.
No, that's not it.
Forget it.
I don't know. Forget it. Just talk about it.
Yeah, well, it was basically about his dietary habits. I got to pull it up because it's classic. I've never heard.
I wanted to get some Krispy Kreme, and he lost 5 or 6 pounds.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you let me, if you just stall for a second,
I can't stall, man.
Yeah, no. It was something about eating too many Cheetos or whatever else. It's in there. I had the dang picture, but I've got a million screenshots, so maybe we'll find it later when we get into other conversations. But I did have a David Montgomery video to share along, because last year at this time, I was going to games still, and we were in preseason. Yeah, I know. What a beautiful thing. Actually, the Kansas City Chiefs had a preseason game today, and they actually had fans they simulated practice at the Kansas City Chiefs Stadium, Arrowhead Stadium, and actually had a certain amount of fans in the stands, socially distanced, maybe trying to figure out how to, map that whole thing out. I actually shared that picture along too. But David Montgomery, this time last year, was really starting to grab Bears fans' attention. We're in the preseason, and I'm in the stands, and I got a great video of kind of showing, just like the Khalil Mack video, kind of what David Montgomery brings and some of the, talent and athleticism he has, and as a running back for the Chicago Bears. Yeah. You love it. I miss all those fans.
He's
You know,
got those
I miss
quick
going
feet.
to the,
He's nice in the cuts. I mean,
absolutely.
he can always he usually never goes down on first contact. I mean, he's an exciting young running back.
It's the first
Can't
thing
wait
you
to see what
see,
he can do
how
this
fast the
year.
jump cut, almost as soon as the ball is in his hand, like almost simultaneously. And that's what makes David Montgomery special is, you know, those quick twitch feet. And then, of course, not giving up on the play. You know, there's other videos you can find where he's bulldozing through like 4 or 5 guys. There's a play in the Chargers game where it's just a simple 8-yard gain, but the amount of effort he put in just to get those 8 yards, and this is the kind of effort he gives you on almost every play.
Right.
And that's, you know, that's why I'm confident that we've got the right guy in David Montgomery. You're hearing, you know, kind of a new transformation to the running back room. All the talk on day one of the Flaming Hots. It was something about Flaming Hots. It's frustrating because the quote was hilarious. I wish we would have had the video, but I guess he eats too many Flaming Hots. You gotta watch out on that diet. You know, the Flaming Hot Cheetos that you get when you go to like Taco Bell, when you get like the nachos and the flame, you got to be careful with all that stuff, David. That's the Greg Braggs diet. That's not.
Braggs loves his Taco Bell.
You don't want to do the Greg Braggs diet. But yeah, they're starting to change up this running back room a little bit, and they're saying that Cordell Patterson is now sitting in the running back room meetings, and maybe he's gonna get even more because we saw him at running back last year, and we've seen him at running back with the Patriots, but you know, not that many snaps. Do you think, Jake, that we're going to see? I mean, like, how many snaps do you really? How many rushes do you really think? Can you put a number on it at this point on how many rushes Cordell Patterson will get at running back this year?
I don't know if I could. I mean, I don't know what it's gonna be like. I mean, I don't know if you got Reek in the back. You got
There's only
Montgomery.
one ball.
I know. I mean, I don't even know. I mean, you got Nagy who calls 7 runs in a game sometimes. So I don't even know what to think about that. I mean, I'd like to think that you're gonna let David be your workhorse, but I don't know. I mean, whoever's got the hot hand's gonna get it. I mean, I have to imagine maybe he gets a few 4 or 5 carries a game. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's going a bit far. We saw, you know, Brandon Robinson on Twitter was getting dragged. You know, this week I'm getting the draggings from everybody, but a week ago, Brandon had put out there that Cordell Patterson was going to lead the Bears in rushing, and it was almost like all of Bears Twitter came down on him with an avalanche of snarky tweets, and Brandon had to wear it for a minute, but then lo and behold, day one of training camp, guess what the story of the day was? Hey, Cordell Patterson is now a running back. So, you know, obviously there's a little, you know, something to that story, and definitely something to monitor as far as how much more they use him in the running back spot. But, you know, then that sounds more like that too cute, you know, Waddle and Sylvia would always say less cute, more nasty, you know.
Right.
And, you know, is
I
the
feel the same
Cordell
way.
Patterson run package going to be too cute? You know, is it going to be too predictable when he tries to go to it? You know, the hope is the offense is moving and he can go to all these different things. You know, in 2018, we're getting Santa's sleigh out and doing all these crazy plays. In 2019, we're lucky to get in the red zone. So, you know, the opportunity, I guess, is going to be a big factor here on how many, you know, chances Cordero gets to get the ball in his hands as a running back. But you like the idea.
Sure.
You know, if you can't get him the ball as a wide receiver with all the different wide receiver options they have, you know, that's the kind of innovation we were hoping we could get from Matt Nagy. Now, can Juan Castillo take this running back room and develop them to do, you know, because he's always talking about lining up schemes. And Matt Nagy said in the pressers these last couple days, you know, and how much easier it is now because they're all in the same mind frame, you know, and it almost sounds like he's talking about last year how coaches weren't on the same page. You know, again, you know, Shane and Phil, you know, taught me a lot when it comes to football stuff, and they're sitting there telling me, hey, it may not necessarily be that Harry Hiestand isn't a good offensive line coach, because obviously Harry Hiestand is known as one of the best offensive line coaches ever. It might just be that him and Matt Nagy don't line up with their philosophy. So, you know, I think that's another thing that the novice fan in the stands isn't going to really understand. London, you're in London, and I'm not kidding you, you can see from the sidelines, Harry Hiestand is going ballistic on the side, taking his clipboard and slamming it on the ground. They're all arguing with each other. So there was obviously, you know, a miscommunication going on there. But you hope that David Montgomery can be a guy that can get you 1,200, 1,400 yards. Man, if they could have that kind. I mean, that's what Bears football has been. And obviously, we want to move into this new generation of football. Patrick Mahomes throwing 60 touchdowns with $500 million in his pocket. We all want that. But you want to win games. That's what's most important.
Right.
And the San Francisco 49ers didn't need 60 touchdowns and a $600 million quarterback to get there. So there's a few different ways to do this, and we just need to get to the dance, and you just never know what happens from there. Running the ball is the way you can get there. There's, like I said, many different ways, and Mitch throwing 40 touchdowns is one of them, sure. But also establishing a run game is another way. When you have a defense like you do, who's putting you in good positions with short fields, and you run the ball, that's time of possession. We've all played Madden. We should all know how to do this by now. So running the ball does help, and last year when Matt Nagy's saying things like, I didn't come here to run the eye, that
was
isn't
embarrassing.
That's not innovative thinking. That's
I would
not
love
innovative.
if the Bears would just absolutely just roster a fullback and just go at it. I mean, I would be thrilled with that. And I when he said that, I was like, come on, man, that's not where we want to go right now.
No, and Mike Burton, the fullback from a couple years ago, Mitch's best buddy, he wouldn't say, last year they had J.P. Holtz playing the fullback position, and there's, he's coming across the line for the crackback block, against the Cowboys, and 9 times he runs the same play and he missed his blocking assignment 9 different ways. It's like they to have a real fullback. You see Kansas City's got one, in different systems that are similar to ours. Let's do it. If we're going to try
I'm all for it, man.
Yeah, it would definitely help, but an emphasis on the run game is definitely important. So we'll have to see how David Montgomery does. Another thing to consider too is every year at camp, they can't do anything when it comes to the run game. It always looks like the defense is dominating the run game because they don't tackle at training camp. So how do you evaluate a run game? How do you truly get them ready to play?
Yeah.
And that's where really, again, why it really sucks there is no preseason, because Nagy was going to be able to push the emphasis and really be able to get the offensive line firing off and the running backs, getting that feel of taking on those hits and getting through. Now they got to, do that in week 1, week 2 of the season, kind of like college football does to kind of shake off the cobwebs. But that's how the entire league's going to be. So that gives me a little bit of hope, where we didn't screw up like we did last year. But that's something to consider, is just the fact that, these guys aren't tackling at practice. So the run game's still going to take a few weeks to really facilitate.
The answer you got out of Nagy was such fluff, too, because you can't evaluate it right now. I mean, he started talking about how they like each other when he was asking about him, because you can't evaluate it right now. I mean,
no.
So it just is what it is. We'll have to wait and see on that. But Cordell Patterson, he's one of those guys that offers so much, and he's so explosive, but he's one of those things, I think, where you remember earlier in the offseason, they're like, or even at the end of, I think it was early in the offseason, they're like, put him in the tight end room or all that stuff. So it's just like, this is one of those guys where he's so talented, you're trying to figure out what to do with him. But I would be really surprised if he was leading the Bears in rushing.
Right. Well,
but that being said,
he's
though,
the best kick returner in football, so you got that. We're always good with that.
I'd even put him back on some punt returns for the hell of it. Why not?
Tariq definitely needs to have a better year than he did last year. I like Tariq back there, but last year it wasn't there. He just couldn't break one. I've been surprised that he's only got the one return against the 49ers in his career. I'm surprised we haven't had a few more. If you watch his college tape, and I know he played, at a smaller school, but, I just, from the tape, you're sitting there like, oh, this guy's going to get 3 kick returns, kind of Hesterish, got that, stuff. And I can remember telling him his first day at training camp in 2017, I was like, you're going to be a star, dude. Everyone's going to love you. Because there's certain guys, when you go to training camp, that have that quick twitch, that it factor, a little bit of swagger. Anthony Miller had that last year, and Tariq in 2017, he was that guy. Mitch was pretty calm, quiet, respectful to everyone. That's who Mitch is. He wasn't making too many waves until like halfway through camp in 2017. It was Tariq Cohen taking everybody's eyes that first time you see him, and now here we are, a few years later, and he needs to have a big year, because he's trying to get paid just like everybody else. So, I'm hoping he can
We'll
stay
see
back
if
there
that
on punt
happens.
returns and have a good year. But if not, you have a guy like Cordell Patterson. Don't put, Anthony Miller. I'm sure Anthony can do it, but, with all the injuries, so I guess they put
we
him
don't
back
need
on.
our separated shoulder.
Yeah,
But
well, I
that'll
guess
be-
it was
that'll be
kick
interesting.
it was kick returns they put him back on. I don't think it was punt. But regardless, they
Either
have
way.
options with Cordero and Tariq, so you like that. Even Eddie Jackson could return punts, but you're never gonna put back Eddie Jackson back there.
Right.
But
So I'm gonna break in for a second because some people have been spouting off about some. There is some breaking news, if you want to call it that way. The Bears are bringing in Cairo Santos for a tryout. So
for the kicking spot.
yes, and that was
Very
an interesting thing
from
because
Kansas City.
and it was interesting because they were talking about how they really hadn't seen any like Eddie out there taking any kicks, doing anything, and Nagy touched on that, which we'll touch on in a second. But first, we should get down on the quarterbacks for a minute before we move on.
Well, we can talk about the kicker for a second. It's breaking news. You broke it, and you're right. They talked about it a little bit in the presser that we haven't seen Eddie at all. When you normally go to training camp, there's always like a couple sessions. They break it up into like 12 different sessions during a 2-hour practice, and there's always like 2 that are the kicking drills. And from what I've been hearing from all these reports, they haven't seen Eddie Pinheiro kick once in all 5 days of these open practices. And that's a surprise because last year, that's all anybody was talking about at training camp was the kicker position. They had the huge tryout ordeal before they got to camp, and then they whittled it down to the 2 guys, and Eddie eventually won it when we got to Bourbonnais. But this year, now we're going the other way. It's just like with the way he was dialed back the offense, now he's going the other way. In this year's camp now with the kicking, it's the opposite. Last year he's 100%, trying to challenge these guys. This year we're not seeing anybody. So you wonder if there's more to that, something going on, maybe an injury, or you just don't know. But I like that they're bringing in competition for Eddie Pinheiro. I like Eddie. I got no problem with Eddie. Made some big kicks, but I'm not gonna sit here and say I was like full confidence when he was stepping out there the second half of the season. There was a good portion of the second half of the season where he was shaky. He missed the kick to win it against the Chargers. The Rams game that everyone remembers for Mitch Trubisky getting benched and Matt Nagy whispering sweet nothings into his ear. But that all started in that game with Eddie Pinheiro missing a bunch of kicks in the first half when Mitch was battling his ass off. There was like drops and all these crazy things. Well, I better slow down. I'm making way too many excuses. I'm making way too many excuses. If you start bringing up context and nuance, you get accused of being a ball washer. So I will not do that, but I'm just saying there were points in the season where Eddie Pinheiro was not instilling confidence in me as a fan, and that's all I'm going off of today. Like I said, we're not analysts. Can't wait to bring on some of these beat guys that are at Hallis Hall to come on today. We just wanted to keep it to me and Jake. But, in the future, we're going to have guys that are going to truly keep you informed. But I'm sitting there, just as a fan, and Eddie Pinheiro is not giving me the kind of confidence that Robbie Gould gave me. And I know Robbie's going to the Hall of Fame, but hey, we want good kickers. It's important, especially in this city. We all saw what happened in 2018 against the Eagles in the playoffs. So, Eddie Pinheiro needs competition just as much as anybody else needs competition. If the quarterback has competition, then give the kicker some competition. What has Eddie Pinheiro earned in this league to not have a little competition? Hey, keep him on his toes too. I don't have any problem with that at all. And I think it's an underlooked aspect, and it was brought up today. It was the last question. We'll play it a little bit by Dan Weeder, but it has been an underlooked topic. We as Chicago fans, Bears fans, we can only pay attention to one thing at a time. So last year it was the kicker, and if we just get the kicker worked out, all our problems are solved. And this year it's if we just get the quarterback figured out, all our problems are solved. That's not how football works. There's a lot of different moving parts, and offense, defense, and special teams all play a hand in you making the playoffs, and then that's what determines what your resume says and what your legacy of your career is. A lot of those things are decided off missed kicks. Yes, they are. That doesn't mean that if Cody Parkey had made the kick that Mitch Trubisky would have thrown 50 touchdowns last year, but I am telling you that narratives and your legacy and just the overall picture of how you view a player sometimes is determined just by one kick. So you need all these aspects to be, dialed in and, having a competitive edge if you want to win a Super Bowl. So I like that they brought in Cairo Santos. So some breaking Bears news in our first
Pretty
live
exciting.
test that we've ever done.
Yeah,
The
Cairo
soft
Santos.
opening.
Thrilled for this.
Very soft
sarcastic,
opening.
but yeah.
I guess it's apropos that this is a soft opening because I can't tell you, Jake, how many times I have been called soft in the last day over my White Sox take. But before we get into any kind of fun conversations,
We're gonna go there.
we gotta get into the quarterback conversation
Yes,
because
finally.
exactly. We worked our way all the way through all this stuff, but we all know that the quarterback is what everyone's got their eye on here in Chicago. Obviously, everyone's got their ears pinned back, yelling at me about my love for Mitchell Trubisky, and I'm just delusional because I've got this fanboy meatball bias because I'm just indebted to what Mitch is for the Bears because I want to tell everybody I told you so. That's not exactly how it's
Well, he
worked
is on your
out.
refrigerator at home.
He
will
is
say
on
that.
my refrigerator.
And
Picture of me,
Your young daughter does know him
Addie.
by looking at his picture. She knows his name.
Yes, we will get a
So, it is
video and
personal.
we'll share
It
it
is
with you guys where I can hold a picture up of Mitch and Addie can point to the picture and say that is Mitch. Yes. Addison, we all love Mitchell Trubisky in this house. And yes, he is on my refrigerator, but that doesn't mean that I can't have an unbiased opinion on who should be the quarterback. Yes, I am rooting for him. No, I am not rooting against Nick Foles, but I do want to see how this shakes out. And no, I have not given up on Mitchell Trubisky yet. Sorry if that offends. So now we are in a quarterback competition, which is what Matt Nagy said it was going to be, a true quarterback competition. So all we have to go off of, unfortunately, are the reports of the guys at Hallis Hall. Normally, this Brags in the Stands show would be rocking and rolling because I would be at camp earlier today. I would have taken 50 video that I wouldn't be allowed to show.
If they would let you.
And then we'd be talking about it with my own perspective. But now we really have to rely on the guys that are there. Everyone that is there. Not just the realists. We are taking everyone's opinion because I am not really of the belief that all these guys that are there, half of them are there for clicks and puff pieces, and half of them, these guys are all there to cover the Chicago Bears. Quit trying to put qualifiers on which writers are what because that's who fits your agenda for what you're trying to spew on Twitter every day. Okay, yes, I only retweet.
All right.
I only retweet
Calm
the
down.
people that say pro Trubisky stuff. Of course, I know how to play the game too. But here we are today, and as we said at the beginning, Matt Nagy finally started to peel back a little bit of some, comments, either nice or bad when it concerning Nick Foles. We really haven't heard that much criticism or praise of Nick Foles. It's mostly been centered around Mitchell Trubisky these first 5 days of camp. And then, of course, we got the cookie crumb of a slight compliment from Matt Nagy for Mitch. So we'll start with Nick Foles because what came out in the presser, because you're not allowed, the guys at camp that are there covering it, Dan Wiederer, Adam Hogue, Adam Johns, JJ Stankovic, Brad Biggs, all these guys are covering it but aren't allowed to tweet anything that they're watching live. So you've got guys like Adam Johns posting GIFs, and we're supposed to try to, it's like a decoder GIF, and you're supposed to try to figure out what he means by the GIF, and then after practice, he, kind of makes you understand what he meant by the GIF by quote tweeting it and giving it its explanation, and it's actually quite a pretty funny idea Adam Johns came up with, but we have to wait till practice is over to hear the results of it, and then they're very minimal on what exactly happened, but Matt Nagy did address an interception thrown by Nick Foles today, and these were his thoughts.
It had been a third down where he was just trying to push the ball downfield. What did you see on that play?
Yeah, I got to go back and watch the tape, but I think there was a little bit of pressure on that throw where he pulled back a little bit, yanked the cord when he threw it, and the ball kind of floated in the air. I'll have to go back and check it out. So tomorrow I'll come back to you with exactly what happened on that play.
Doesn't want to divulge too much, but he did call out the fact
Never
that
wants
he
to
did.
divulge.
Yes, but he did call out Nick on that INT to Eddie Jackson. So it's good to hear that. And then the thing that was really the big kicker today was small heap of praise that he put on Mitch. Now I texted Greg, I don't know, a couple of days ago, and Nagy was asked a question just like, what have you seen from, it was a very vanilla question, what have you seen that you like about Mitch, or what have you seen that's positive about what he's done? And he didn't want to give him anything at that moment, just went straight on to the fact that, it's too early and all that stuff. Didn't want to give him a nugget of
What's your
of
opinion on
praise.
that? Because Sylvie laughed at me. He was talking about that on the air, and he's trying to nitpick. He thinks I'm trying to find every positive comment to prove that Mitch is going to play, and he's trying to find every negative comment to prove that Nick's going to play. And he took that as that when Nagy did not want to give an inch when he was fed the softball lobbed question from Adam Hogue, like, hey, Mitch has kind of improved in back-to-back days, and then Nagy didn't want to give an inch. Do you think that Matt's doing that because he's lost complete trust in Mitch, or do you think that he's trying to put a new attitude into the team?
I don't know. It's a good question. I think to a degree he might be fed up with Mitch. He might really want to see something this year out of him, which of course, but I think last year he probably was a pretty big disappointment for Matt. I mean, now granted, I would give Matt a lot of grief when you and I would talk last year, and I think a lot of struggles are on Matt's shoulders from last year. I do think that personally. I am very critical of Mitch though at the same time, but I don't feel like Nagy set him up for success the same way he did the previous year. Now, granted, you did see footage of Nagy's call sheets on Sundays that seemed to be a lot shorter than they were the previous years, and then you're thinking to yourself, is Mitch capable of running his style offense? So maybe he's fed up with them. I don't know. But right now I don't know that either of these quarterbacks are exactly where you're going to want to be when it comes to if you're a head coach and you're trying to not get fired this year. So you might not be getting a stellar quarterback play out of either of them, but so he might just, I don't know. He hoping for someone to really peek through.
I wonder if Matt is surprised. He probably isn't, because, any football person would be able to tell you, like, this isn't Madden. You're not just going to bring Nick Foles in, drop him into the roster, and then you just start making plays with everybody. They got to build chemistry. They got to build timing. And Nick Foles wasn't able to work with these guys in the offseason. Trubisky we saw a lot of video out with a lot of these different guys. Cole Kmet, Tariq Cohen, Anthony Miller, a lot of them. Cody Whitehair. But Nick Foles, you got a pandemic going on. He also had a newborn child in the offseason. So, I'm not blaming him for not being able to get with the players. It was a tough offseason. But the fact is he wasn't able to get with anybody. So this is the first time he's ever, getting around these guys. I wonder if Matt Nagy is surprised that Nick isn't, moving along faster.
I mean, if he is, I think that's on him, because what do you expect?
They were so confident when they talked about his knowledge of the system and what he can do and point guard this, but if that's who he is and he's this point guard, full knowledge and all this stuff, he was Super Bowl MVP. He's had a year where he had 30 touchdowns and 2 interceptions.
Sure. And that's what Jacksonville thought when they signed him to a huge deal.
Right, he gets paid over $20 million, because somebody was saying to me, like, oh, it's like Chase Dayton, he's outplaying the backup, big deal. Well, no, he's outplaying a guy that gets paid over $20 million to be a quarterback. That's not Chase. Chase Daniels didn't get paid like that. Tyler Brady doesn't get paid like that. So now Nick Foles is in here, and it just surprises me that he's, from what it sounds like, being outplayed so far by Mitch. Chemistry aside, if Mitch is such a bust, and in the way that some try to portray him, like he's Jamarcus Russell, this guy's a former Super Bowl MVP. So I don't know. Again, I'm gonna give him the qualifier. He hasn't been around these guys, so I get it. I made this mistake as a Bears fan the year we traded for Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler Day, April 3rd, April 1st, whatever, April 2nd. It was the day after April Fool's Day, I believe. We all thought we were being fooled again, and Jay Cutler gets traded to the Bears. I thought we were going to the Super Bowl that next year, because when I traded Jay Cutler on Madden, the Bears start lighting it up, and that's how it works.
That's how it
Then
works.
the
That's
season
real life.
starts, and you're like, oh yeah, he has to build continuity. Oh yeah, this might not be the right offensive coordinator for him. Oh yeah, he's got Jamarcus Webb writing poems instead of blocking. That's
Going to
what
McDonald's.
you don't think about all the variables, and then before you know it, you get first year stud quarterback, Pro Bowl quarterback that you traded for from Denver throws 30 interceptions, and now you've got the whole fan base split on whether or not you like the guy. And that is still going on to this day. So it's just like, I don't think that Matt is probably surprised that he hasn't come along, but there was just so much talk of, how easily, he's been in this. It's not like he's coming to a new team, new system. It's probably some different philosophies somewhat, but he's played in this system most of his career with the Eagles and the Chiefs. So,
I really, when it happened, I mean, I hated the Foles trade. I still not thrilled with the Foles trade. In theory, the idea is like everything you're saying. You're getting a guy who knows the system, Super Bowl champion, quarterback, MVP, all that stuff. But he was garbage last year, and he did not stay healthy. And you don't know he's going to step right in and be Eagles Nick Foles. And that on top of trading for him and picking up a big contract, I hated it. And I'm still not thrilled with it, because I don't even think he's going to win the job personally. I think Mitch is going to win this job. I've always thought Mitch was going to win this job. And a lot of the reasons for that are, like you mentioned, Mitch has been with these guys all off season. He's been working with them. And these guys, for whatever everyone says about Mitch, the guys in the locker room love Mitch. And they want him to do well, and they want him to succeed. And I feel like he's going to win the job personally. And I hated the Foles trade.
Couldn't agree more. People that think that, trying to decipher tweets from Allen Robinson and Cordell Patterson and different guys trying to get free agent quarterbacks to come here, and that means he doesn't like Mitch. But, now he comes in here. I like I said, I agree that, it's to me, Nick Foles, he should be outplaying. Yes, he has not been around these guys. Completely get that. But in the way that I've been told, Mitchell Trubisky isn't anything. He's a bust. So, a guy that makes over $20 million shouldn't have that much trouble. If it's that close, then there should be a discussion in place. I never thought I'd see a Bears fan base clamor so hard for a guy that hasn't won a football game in 2 years. We talk about, if I started bringing up 2018 about Mitch, people would be like, that was 2 years ago. What are you talking? That's the last time Nick Foles won a game in the NFL, was the double doink, 2018. The only reason he was in that game was because the Bears beat the Vikings the week before. The Eagles never make the playoffs, and so fine. I don't think the gap is that far from these guys. And now you're starting, because like I said, everybody's like, oh, they're only showing the Mitchell Trubisky highlights in the on the puff pieces they put out on Bears Twitter or whatever, on their main official account. But today, now they're showing, I hadn't thought they'd been talking much about the Nick Foles mistakes. Like, if Mitch had been outplaying him here these first 4 days, how come we hadn't heard about any specific mistakes from Nick? We heard the specific mistake for Mitchell Trubisky stepping out of bounds on 1st and 1, and he stepped out on the 3, and you would have thought that Mitchell had said hike and ran to the other goal line the other way. Now, I get running out of bounds in any capacity is something you learn in high school. But to act like nobody in the NFL has ever done that before is silliness. And if you think that whoever wins this job, somebody isn't going to make a mistake where you're like, that, you cannot do that. You can't do that. Both guys are going to make a mistake where you say that at some point. So finally we hear, everybody's like, oh, finally, a Nick Foles highlight on Twitter. Finally we hear of a Nick Foles mistake, because I'm wondering, if Mitch is outplaying him, where are the examples of that? Because when I saw Mitch outplay Mike Glennon a couple of years ago, and I'm calling into Waddle and Sylvie, beating the table, we cannot start Mike Glennon. We have to start with the kid. Mike Glennon is terrible. He's throwing 5 picks at lollipop picks. It was embarrassing. And you'd read the paper, and they'd be like, well, Mike Glennon's still holding down the job. Week 3 of the preseason against the Titans, he gets the opening drive for a touchdown. They're like, Mike Glennon has won the starting job for week
I
one.
remember that
That's
very
not a competition because Mitch outplayed him every step of the way, even in the third preseason game. And so I'm arguing with Tom Waddle because I can see it for myself. Well, I can't see this year. So I'm not going to talk like I know what's going on in camp when I'm not there. I don't. I am reading, and just like everybody else is now, no more video for Greg. No, I can't hide in the trees or strap myself to a human drone and fly over Hallis Hall. I don't think George McCaskey would ever let me go in Soldier Field again. But trust me, the thought has crossed my mind. I'm going off of what these guys are telling me. So, if either guy's throwing a pick, Nick Foles, I want to hear about it. If either guy's stepping out of bounds or making a mistake, rookie mistake, I want to hear about all the mistakes. I want to hear about all the good plays. We want to hear about it all. Unfortunately, we only get to hear snippets of each thing. And even the reporters are limited on certain days they're on certain fields. So one day we saw one shot a couple days ago where Kevin Fishman and Adam Johns are 2 feet away from Allen Robinson making a beautiful catch around Eddie Jackson. And then the next day, I guess they were 100 yards away from where the practice is going on. So it's even harder for them sometimes to truly give us what we're trying to get here. But Nick Foles throws an interception to Eddie Jackson, and that concerns me because, Nick Foles, for all the talk about what he does well, I've seen enough. I'm a football fan. I play fantasy football. I follow what's going on. Hey, Nick Foles throws a pick, and Nick Foles has thrown plenty of lollipops. I've got a video highlight of the last win Nick Foles has in the NFL, and this is a throw he had at Soldier Field. And these are somewhat of, we want to talk about, Mitchell Trubisky and some of the things that hold this team back. Well, if Nick Foles is coming in here, it's not going to be, I heard Dan Wieder say, you want 3 scoops positivity or you want realistic. So let's get into realistic and talk about some of what Nick Foles does in the clutch moments, in the prime moments, and see how that's going to translate. This is some of my video from the fans in the stands perspective. So, as you can see, the line breaks down. He's getting pressured, moved out to his right, and, makes a pressured throw and a forced throw into the end zone to 4 guys standing around. Adrian Amos easily able to, any 4 of those guys could have picked that ball off, and he threw a few lollipops in that 2018-19 playoffs, on a decently warm night in January against the Eagles. He was throwing lollipops. So for everybody that's like trying to convince me that Nick Foles is this, Super Bowl MVP Hall of Fame quarterback Super Bowl MVP quarterback that we're getting here, fine. I'm not trying to say I'm rooting against it. I'm sitting here like, well, the last time I saw him personally, you want to talk about how bad Mitch looked in the first half of that playoff game. Nick Foles didn't look very good in that game at any point until the final drive, and then he scores, they get the touchdown, go-ahead touchdown. Golden Tate admits after the game that he didn't even know what play they were running when he ran the little out to get the, goal line red zone touchdown to take the lead and win the game.
Right.
They were, it was, I'm not going to say it was luck, but it was kind of luck. And Nick Foles is lucky as hell that he won that game for all the bad, you want to talk about all the bad throws Mitch threw. And hey, I know it was 2 years ago, but like I said, last win for Nick Foles in the NFL. So he makes mistakes, and so you hear he threw a pick to Eddie Jackson. I don't want those kind of forced mistakes, from either guy. But mistakes are going to happen. That's a reality. So, interesting to hear Nick Foles, from that, doesn't sound like he had the best of days. He didn't sell him down the river or anything, but it doesn't sound like Nick Foles in these first 5 days has truly impressed. Now, moving on to Mitchell Trubisky, Matt Nagy did have some thoughts, and he attached some thoughts to the kicker to this as well. So we'll play this audio and then react to it.
And then also, in contrast to last year, we haven't seen Eddie Pinheiro take a kick yet. Where is he on your radar? I know you got a lot of other things to figure out, but where is he on your radar at this stage?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So in regards to the throw down the middle, when you see, that's one of those ones where, I don't say a whole lot when I'm back there watching the O&D go. I like to just kind of take it all in. But that was one where I got excited and told him I just thought it was a hell of a throw. Great vision, great anticipation, and you give a guy a chance to catch the ball and run. That's all you can ask for. So that was a great play. And then, with Pinheiro, same thing. We're just our situations that we have, you can see we're putting these guys in different positions and they're working through things. And I think for him right now, it's just kind of an idea for all of us to just kind of see where he's at and get going here. We're going to start putting these guys through some punting and special teams and field goal stuff and really get them moving. So we're just not there yet.
You liar, Matt Nagy, by Eddie Pinheiro. You liar. That's what he did. He lied because then, 30 minutes later from that video, it's not audio anymore, Greg. You are live on video. That video, 30 minutes later, he goes and picks up Cairo Santos from he's been on many teams, but I was the Kansas City Chiefs. But now that we've got Cairo, it's a shame we get the audio of John Fox.
He tried him out. He's not
John Fox getting his name wrong, a few years ago. But the real quote was to take from there was Mitchell Trubisky's, cookie that he finally received from Matt Nagy. Wouldn't take any of the crumbs, and Matt finally gave him a little compliment, for making the nice throw up the seam to Jesper Horsted. And, that's kind of what we're all looking for. Is Matt Nagy seeing any signs of improvement? Is there any kind of positivity or, encouragement? Every time they ask him a lob-up question, is he still hitting Mitch with the sharp blade? You didn't hear that there. He made a point to tell the media, and he's calculated. He knows what that quote is going to do when you tell all the media scrum that. So he tells them, hey, I don't normally say things when I'm standing behind, because when they're practicing, you got everybody lined up, and then the coaches are a few feet behind the quarterbacks as they change out from first team, second team, then third string might get a snapper here or there. But every once in a while, Matt might come into the huddle if they have some confusion, trying to get things set or whatever. But, what Matt says is very rarely does he come up and talk to these guys, because he doesn't want to get in their head. They're trying to, figure out the next play and do their practice. They're trying to evaluate without confusing them too much. So Matt made a point there on that throw to come up and tell him. So, hey, this is all we have to go off of. I know this is the Mitchell Trubisky Propaganda News Network.
It is.
And that's what I'm here to do. So, yes, we're going to show you a Nick Foles interception highlight, and then we're going to play you audio where Matt Nagy says that he loves Mitchell Trubisky. And then when this show ends, we're just going to announce Mitch, the starting quarterback. That's my goal with this show, is to continue to push Mitchell Trubisky propaganda. So, it sounds like to me, and like I said, I'm extremely biased when it comes to this, because, I'm, delusional and obsessed, is that Mitch is up 4-1 on these 5 days of training camp. If we're keeping a scorecard and we're going off of the reports from everybody in the media scrum, not just the realistic ones, all of them that are there, we go off of all the guys, Hub Arkish, and Brad Biggs, and Dan Wiederer, and J.J. Stankovic, and Hogan Johns, and all these guys. We're going to go off of all their opinions. And when you do, it's clear that it seems like Foles won the first day, and Mitch has won every day since. So it's 4-1 now. This is a quarterback competition, ladies and gentlemen. So I don't have anything else to go off of other than what we've seen in the offseason, and that's Mitch working with his teammates every day, it seems like. Different guys going all over, wherever they're going in Illinois, high school stadiums to practice. Now we're at camp, and he looks like he's come with a little pep in his step. Cordell Patterson, a player that was, thought of to want to be done with Mitch because he's out there, parading around on Twitter trying to find new quarterbacks for the team. But he was the first one to give Mitchell Trubisky the big compliment to start camp that, hey, this is a new quarterback here. I didn't think he was as much of a leader this year. I'm seeing more of a leader and, a little spark in his step. That's great. I know the detractors are going to say, well, why wasn't he doing that last year? Hey, I'm happy Cordell is saying it right now. And all that matters right now is Mitch is playing well for the Chicago Bears, our Chicago Bears, And right now it seems that he's winning the quarterback competition. It's not over, but again, we only have 21 days till week 1. So you want your first team quarterback to get reps with these guys and get acclimated before you have to go into Detroit and try to win a football game. So how many days is Matt Nagy going to say is acceptable for a first team to be comfy? I got to say it's over 10 days. He's not going to say 1 week, get ready, because in the last week leading up to Detroit, those last 7 days, it's going to be like a regular football week where they're starting to slow down practice and game prep. So to me, if we're at the day 22 days left, this is going to get decided in the next 8 days. And I'm trying to go as far as I can there, because I need those extra days to get the number QB1 as many reps as possible with these guys.
Yeah, next week's going to be huge. Depending on what happens, probably will tell a lot about who's going to be starting week 1. And hopefully Mitch can just run away with this at this moment and just go. I mean, that's
root for it. It's
why
okay. Say it with your chest. Let's hope Mitch runs away with this. And if he comes out the gate and looks like shit, guess what? You got a former Super Bowl MVP, a guy who has came in to an organization and came in as the backup and stepped in as the reliever and took that team to a Super Bowl and won it. So I feel good about it.
It feels like that's always been, in essence, the plan. I mean, you're gonna
the hope.
I would imagine.
Right.
Yeah, you've handed Mitchell. You're gonna give Mitch the keys, let him see what he can do, and he's got a short leash. You yank him and you put in Foles, and then that's it. That's
Seems
what you're
simple
rolling
enough
with.
to me. You
Right.
could see this coming a mile away halfway through last season. Once you knew last season was over, it was almost obvious they were going to sign Nick Foles. He was done with the Jags. Gardner Minshew mania had taken over. Nick Foles and Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy's the reason Nick Foles is still in the NFL. So do you see the relationship? Hey, it made sense. You know, the Cam Newtons and all these other ideas of the world. I don't blame Matt Nagy for bringing in Nick Foles. You got to know who you got there, because his job's on the line. So if Mitch is the problem and Mitch and everything else is figured out and Mitch is still overthrown, not moving the football down the field, not executing in the red zone, you can't rely on Chase Daniels or Tyler Bray to save your job. You got to go with someone you can trust. Cam Newton and these other guys who have never been in this system to try to figure it out in 3. If you think Nick Foles is having trouble figuring everything out in these short 3 weeks before the season starts, a guy that's never been in the system at all is going to have even harder time. So I don't blame him. Nick Foles was the right move. A guy like that, or Alex Smith, you're seeing his resurgence. That's the kind of guy I was looking at, because hell, just give Mitch one more shot, and then you get a veteran backup that's a good safety valve. That is how I view Nick Foles. And if it all doesn't work out, guess what? You can wipe the entire slate clean. GM, head coach, quarterback, if it really goes that bad.
That's the thing.
Which I highly doubt it does, but you never know.
I didn't like the Foles trade, but I understand it. If the team goes down this year, Nagy is really on a hot seat. Pace is on a huge hot seat. So they're going to bring in a guy that they think they can just inject and win some games. I get it. I didn't expect them to have to eat up all that contract and give up a fourth for him, which I wasn't huge about, but I get it. Of course I get it. I wasn't excited about it as a fan, because the Bears were in between a rock and a hard place for this year when it comes to quarterback. You have no picks. You got a guy who's underperforming that you traded up for some reason, and took over 2 big star quarterbacks, and you're in a shitty spot, really.
Yep.
So what are you going to do? So I get it, but
how do you view, and I know you are short on time, it's the weekend, and we appreciate, everybody hanging out here on a Saturday afternoon with us, and Jake, I appreciate you carving out, your day, and how much prep we had to put in just to get this test run show off the ground. But, before we completely sign off, I do want to know how you view the fan aspect of this. There's a lot of debate on, how you root for these quarterbacks and how that makes you a Bears fan. What is the right etiquette in going about rooting for either one of these quarterbacks in a quarterback competition, but they're both Bears players? We're all Bears fans, and we all keep hearing that, being repeated when we're trying to explain who you want as the quarterback. Everyone keeps putting this qualifier. They're like, I just want what's best for the Bears. How do you break this down when it comes to someone like me who wants to root for Mitch, but is being accused of it being a fan delusion as opposed to, an analytical view where, hey, it just shows on the field and I root for the jersey first. And if you're in the Mitch camp, then that just shows that you're more of just a player first type of guy. How do you view this whole kind of conversation?
Well, I mean, in essence, it is you want what's best for the Bears. People, it's the recency bias thing. Everyone, Mitch broke everybody's heart last year to a degree. If you want to go there with it, that's a bit of an over dramatization, and it's completely vanilla comment because there's so many factors that go into play with that. But when you have a quarterback that you took second overall over a Mahomes and a Watson, and he's not performing, you're going to be so highly critical of him. And at this point, you're seeing those two players ascend. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is an absolute superstar in this league, and he could have been a Bear. So that's just something that's not going to sit well. I don't even know if that's Mitch's fault necessarily, and that to that degree, because he's not either of those guys, and he's probably not going to be. And
for someone like me that's rooting for Mitch, is it only out of delusion, or
I'm rooting for Mitch too,
but is that a delusion, hope-based thought, or is there a football reasoning behind it?
I think there's an absolute football reason behind it, because I think Mitch still has. I mean, granted, Nick Foles has been to the absolute mountaintop, but as in a funny way, I would say physically, I think Mitch has a higher ceiling of what he can do on the field. I don't think if Mitch would just kind of center himself and use his legs again, that's a huge asset that you're probably not getting as much of from Foles. If Mitch could settle down, make his reads, and use his legs when he needs to, that's huge. And that's how we won in 18, because he was doing that. And I think that would be
third best quarterback rating in the NFL in 2018.
Right. And so that's one of those things where you're like, I want to see him do that again. I know he can do it.
We've seen it.
Yeah, we've seen
it. Wasn't Patrick Mahomes, but we saw a guy that could be successful and make plays, and that was at a young age, and he hadn't seen as much.
Well, that's the thing. When you're talking about, we just talked about how the biggest story last year was who was going to kick. It wasn't what's Mitch going to do. Everyone thought highly of Mitch coming into 2019, and everyone thought highly of Matt Nagy coming into 2019, and those things did not pan out for whatever reason. There's plenty of them, but that just didn't happen. So it's, you should absolutely root for Mitch. I'm rooting for Mitch to win this job. I want to see what he can do. I think there's also maybe a little paranoia in the background to where you'd think maybe Mitch does start. Maybe Mitch does play 16 games. Maybe Mitch has an average year and the Bears win 9 games, 10 games, and he gets extended. Boom. And that's the fear, because people don't want Mitch to be extended necessarily. Even if the Bears won 13 games and Mitch threw for 4,000 yards and had, a good balance between between touchdowns, interception rate, people would still be hesitant that he gets extended. Exactly. And I might be too. And I guess he could be. That's a major payday for even a franchise tag.
Yep.
And so there's all these different facets to this story. So I understand both sides of the coin. I want to see Mitch start. I want to see what he can do. And if he flops, that's it. Pull him, put it in Foles. And in that regard, when Foles comes in, you're hoping for the best. Foles isn't the future either. So you're going to be hoping that you're picking up a quarterback in 21 regardless. But, I understand all facets of it except for just wishing the worst for him, because
ceiling is definitely higher with Mitchell Trubisky. Will it happen? Nobody knows, but to not find out or not even take a look is, to me, irresponsible for the Bears to do. They've spent 3 years on this guy, And, my good buddy Samir, would tell you, hey, that's the Blake Bortles syndrome. You're doing the same thing that they did. Oh, hey, give him another year. I don't care what you call it. I want to see it for myself. I hope it wouldn't cost us making the playoffs, missing it by one game. But that's how I want to see it unfold, just for peace of mind's sake. But if Nick Foles is so outstanding that you had to bench him, so be it. But are we hearing that so far? Because now we're 5 days in. This isn't hypothetical talk like 2 months ago. Now we're 5 days in, and he's up 4 days to 1. If we got the marker, so I'm sorry.
From the limited information we have, you could make the assumption that he's had.
Could you pull up the Lester tweet? Just to kind of give an idea of the conversation being had on Bears Twitter. It's been ongoing all day long. But I thought he kind of encapsulated it in a nice way. Lester Wiltfong Jr., I'm a junior myself, Greg Bragg Jr., so I love the juniors of the world. Lester Wiltfong from Windy City Gridiron, they do great work over there. Lester tweeted, the only football reason that matters in 2020 is which player is better. Start the man that gives you the best chance to win right now. If that's Mitch, great. If that's Foles, great. But if it's neither, oh no, we suck again.
Right.
So, yeah, I get it. We all just want what's best. I've said it to Waddle all week long. That should go without saying. We obviously all want what's best. But, again, what we have to go off of right now is that it sounds like Mitch is outplaying, Nick Foles here at training camp. He had a touchdown to Jesper, or I don't know if it was a touchdown, but nice throw up the seam to Jesper Horsted. Yeah. Why don't you play the Jesper Horsted video just because we had it queued up and it's fun to look at?
Why not?
Again, like I said, this give you that brags in the stands feel one last time. This is last year, week 3 of the preseason, when Andrew Luck took the NFL world by storm and retired. And while all that was going on, Jesper Horsted was introducing himself to the National Football League. A beautiful
Love
catch. You like to see Jesper's made a lot of really crafty catches. Jesper's an athlete. Last year I saw him at Eddie Jackson's softball tournament, and Jesper from Minnesota, I believe he was the Minnesota State Player of the Year. And guys that win that award coming out of high school are like there's some guys that are on that award list that are all-time great players from different sports, and Jesper Horsted once won that. And now we're hearing he made a play at camp today, from Mitch Trubisky. But I always love that video. That was a nice catch, nice shot right there on the goal line.
Hey,
Indianapolis Colts Stadium is beautiful.
It means a lot that
Lucas Oil.
Yeah, it means a lot that Jesper's getting these reps though too, because obviously you've heard a lot about Jimmy Graham lighting it up, and everyone's high on Cole, and that's awesome. And then, but you got Jesper still grabbing some reps here with Mitch, and so obviously they think high of him too.
Well, Jimmy's older, so you hope he can stay through the season healthy. But you've got now Cole Kmet and Jesper, as the developing tight ends coming up, and a huge transformation in the tight end room, and a much needed one when Trey Burton and Adam Shaheen are non-existent. Again, another variable that adds into affecting the running game and the passing game. There's no tight end on a team that literally, the tight end is the most important position in this offense in Philadelphia and Kansas City with Zach Ertz and Travis Kelce. Another point that I didn't get to bring up to Waddle crying to him every day on the radio this week, talking about Nick Foles and how well he's able to move in the system. Well, Philadelphia Eagles offensive line 2 years ago and notoriously is always very good.
Oh, yeah.
And they have Zach Ertz, and then everyone also wants to compare, Mitch to what, Patrick Mahomes does, and Patrick Mahomes has Travis Kelce as his tight end. Give us Travis Kelce and watch things open up for a myriad of players. I mean, come on, that's it's not an indictment to say you need better skill position players to have, your running back or your quarterback or anybody step up. It's a team sport, that's how it goes.
Bradley Soul was doing everything he could to be our tight end and just never materialized.
Oh God, that experiment of off the team, on the team, off the team,
Yeah,
on the team.
up,
So,
off, on, off, on.
but interesting. So, here we are. That wraps it up for the Bears conversation. But here we are, 5 days in. I don't know if there's a practice tomorrow. I used to know the schedule by heart weeks
I tried to
before
find it. I actually
coming
tried
to
to find
Bourbon Day.
it.
Yeah. I'm going to have to maybe slide into a beat writer's DM and see if they'll text us the list of the training camp schedule. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. But yeah,
I looked for it, but
I didn't even know if they were practicing today until like 9 a.m. because I'm spending all morning arguing with Sox Twitter, and it was just ridiculous. But yeah, this wraps up the Bears conversation. A lot of fun, and I'm really, really humbled for everybody that came in and joined us for all that.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Before we completely hop off, and I know Jake has to go, but we did have an avalanche of Sox Twitter come at me today, and I'd be remiss if we don't bring it up because it literally, I don't want to say it was like a viral moment, but literally the Twitter world was taken by storm, and you can kind of see behind our video screens there a certain letter Jake's trying to pull it out. Thank God it's getting blocked up, but it created all this controversy because I dare suggested, Kaplan is my good buddy David Kaplan from ESPN 1000 has been trying to start this new unity slogan, and he just got a new tattoo, live life all in, and everybody at the station makes fun of him, Chris Black and Adam Abdal. So now he's talking about getting a tattoo that says unity, and so he's saying, hey, I want to bring everybody together, and I'm done being nasty, so I want to root for the Sox this year. And I was like, whoa, slow down, Cap. Like, I'm all about positivity and happiness, but there's a line, and Cubs, Sox, you got to pick a side. You can't root for both, in my opinion. I know others feel that way, but, then, we've got all these different things over the years. 2003, Michael Barrett punching A.J. Pierzynski. The Sox win the World Series first, and then the Cubs, just drown in misery, Bartman, the whole thing. Then we finally win one. I had given up the Cubs-Sox rivalry at that point. Hey, the Cubs won it all. I'm done bickering with my Sox fans' friends. But then the Cubs made the terrible mistake of trading Eloy Jimenez to the freaking Chicago White Sox. And now all I ever hear is thanks, Cubs, thanks, Cubs, thanks, Cubs.
You just got
from
one. I just
Jason Benetti. I know, it's my curse now. And I have to hear it at all times. Thanks for Eloy. Thanks, Cubs. I know, Jason Benetti. Thank you very much for that slogan. And that kind of ramped up this rivalry again. Now,
that's fair. Fast
forward to 2020, both teams are good. We come into the season, and now we have to play each other in the preseason. And the White Sox drub us. And I'm hearing all this chatter. Now, all of a sudden, all the White Sox fans are coming out of the woodwork again. They all were hiding for the last 20 years, since 2000, or 15 years, since 2005, and now they're back. And they're harassing me, and I just said, I was done hearing it before the season even started. Like, I love their new talent. I think they have a chance to make it to the World Series, but shut up already. The Sox fans like going in and all about thanks Cubs after every Eloy home run. We get it. Terrible trade.
Yes.
So now they drub us last night 10-1. First game of the year. I had to wear a freaking White Sox jersey because I lost the bet in the preseason. I'm wearing a Frank Thomas jersey, and they get whooped. And after the game, NBC Sports Chicago puts up a tweet where they're flying the L flag. Now, this has always been a crux of mine. If you're flying an L flag as a Sox fan, you are more concerned about the Cubs losing than you are winning. That's a fact. It doesn't take a psychologist to peel back the onion and see that you're celebrating us losing, not you winning. I kept seeing Sox fans, because I suggested that this is kind of a Bush League, taunt. I'm not against taunting. I love taunting, but like, you're doing it in a goofy way. You look bad. The only comparison I can give it to is Purdue fans have had a bad out because they used to do this tradition where they the band played the song called Hellfire, and at the end they'd go, you sucks. Well, they got rid of it in the last couple years because half the fan base is like, we don't want, they would chant this IU sucks Hellfire thing when IU wasn't even there. So they're sitting there, half the Purdue fan base saying, hey, why are we concerned with IU? We should be concerned about ourselves. So they got rid of it. It's the same idea here. I don't have a problem with Sox fans taunting away. Thanks, Cubs is total fair game. We traded you him. But to fly the L flag around, yes, we fly a W. We fly a W and an L flag outside of Wrigley Field on the top of the old scoreboard in center field after every game, and it's been that way for decades. And it was to signify to the neighborhood whether or not the Cubs won that day. We're not flying a W to flat wave it in your face and make fun of you. That started in 2015 with the Fly the W slogan. So I can't control that. But what I do know is the Fly the W slogan came after Sox fans started busting out this L flag. And I'm sorry, you're more worried about the Cubs losing than you are your own team winning. And that's always been, a moniker attached to Sox fans. It's this little brother syndrome. They've got an inferiority complex. I've heard it from a million Cub fans, and it's been an argument as old as time. People act like I'm the first one bringing this up today because of course I tweet this out, and NBC Sports Chicago quote tweets it, and now I've got all of Sox Twitter coming at me, Jake, and it's been a long day. I was up at 3 a.m. because Addie woke up screaming and crying, and so I just stayed up and hit to the grindstone and started making my case with Sox Twitter. I'm fighting the Mitch haters. Now I've got Sox Twitter. I've got a lot of a lot of dilemmas on my hand, trying to juggle. Kaplan was yelling at me. So I thought I'd share some of these screenshots, some of these comments that were coming this way because I was, again, questioning, whether or not the L flag was on the up and up. And I'm sorry, I just kind of feel like it's a little Bush League. But here's Charlie Blanchard, a great follower of mine. And he's a big Purdue fan as well. I thought maybe the Purdue point might maybe help him understand where I'm coming from. But he admits here that the L thing is dumb. As a Sox fan, he says. But the Cub fan superiority complex is out of this world. He says, y'all act like the Cubs are the Yankees historically. And you know what? That's fair. I'll give him that. Charlie, that's a fair point. Cub fans definitely act like their shit doesn't stink. We have a great stadium. We have great jerseys. We have great energy when you go to the game. There's no better feeling than walking into Wrigley Field and watching a game. We're very proud of that as Cub fans, and I can understand how that can rub some fans the wrong way, but we can't control that. I apologize, Charlie, but you do make a fair point. Tony Lascaro here, he brought something up that, I thought he also made a good point. He said, got a Sox fan friend who does this on Facebook all the time. He doesn't say much about the Sox because they're losing or playing 500 ball, but whenever the Cubs lose right away with these memes and the L flag stuff comes out. Like all the years the Bears were bad, long as they beat the Packers, they're happy. And that's it. For me, I feel like Cub fans, their number one rival is the Cardinals. To me, and I know White Sox fans will argue this, but I don't care. It's my show. You can go and get your own show and make your own stupid points. But on here, you got to listen to my stupid points. I believe that the White Sox biggest rival is the Cubs. They think that. That's how I think. Now, they can disagree with me all they want, but I see the energy because when I go to a Sox game every year. I go to multiple Sox games every year, but I always go to a Cubs Sox game every year. And I can tell you for a fact that because attendance is always a huge issue, and Jake will put up some more of the comments that were coming my way. This was actually a good one from Kyle McMahon because we were really getting into it at first, and Kyle was not happy with my tweets. He's a Sox fan. He was kind of throwing some hard shade at me at first, and, this is all in fun, guys. I'm having fun. This is a sports conversation. I have my opinions about the quarterback or our baseball teams, but at the end of the day, this is sports conversation. We are all having fun. We are lucky we even get to be talking about sports, honestly, at this point, because a few months ago, we had nothing. So if we're arguing about L flags, hey, what a world. That's the kind of world I want to live in. Right. Those are easy arguments, better than politics. But he said, no, go back to it. Sorry. I just loved it because he said, I'm not going to lie, while I disagree with, my premise, he says, Braggs held his line about the flag and didn't get personal as much and stayed generic about his complaint. You don't see that much on Twitter. Good on you. And I appreciate that, Kyle, the acknowledgement. I'm not trying to fight anybody on here about sports opinion. So don't get too caught up in a bunch about this. This is all fun and games, but I am vehemently against the L flag. I apologize. So we'll run through a few more of these, and then we'll cut Jake loose because we know we got to get to it. I got to get to it too. We got the little kiddo running around. I can hear her screaming right now. But my guy, David Kaplan, he was very concerned with me this morning because, as I said, at 3 a.m., this is when I started my Twitter war with White Sox Nation because I woke up and saw that NBC Sports Chicago had retweeted it. David Kaplan works for NBC Sports Chicago, and that's where all this interaction had came from. And now I got to deal with Sox Twitter all day, and I'm really hoping that the Cubs can beat the Sox here coming up at 7 o'clock. But David Kaplan, wakes up at 8:35, it looks like, kind of waking up late, Sparkles, but he was definitely concerned with me, wondering if I get paid by my tweets. He said, "Sweet mother of God, relax." And yeah, I can actually hear Kaplan's voice tweeting that because he was actually attached to a lot of the tweets I was arguing with. So his notifications had to be like a million. And I know he was probably rolling his eyes. But hey, I'm sorry. I'm incessant. Jake will tell you. I really make sure I hit my points. And, sometimes, I'm just going to keep going. I can't handle it. I just, this is what I do. But Junior, another great follower. I really enjoy his interactions. He took a little break, but now he's back to Twitter. He said, sure, if the Sox keep getting better, which they need consistency, then Cap's viewpoint will change, and he will hate the White Sox. It's the same for Sox fans. When the Cubs suck, I don't care about them, honestly. Bears-Packers, when the Packers go 6-10, I don't care for them. 10-6, F them. And I think that was eloquently put because that is what's going on. Both the Cubs right now, and that's why you're seeing people care a little more. If one or the other was bad, you wouldn't even have this argument. I could have tweeted out something about the L flags and nobody would have said a word, but both teams are really good right now. Unfortunately, we can't go to the games or else we might be seeing a lot of vitriol in the stands. It would have been kind of funny to capture on video, but we'll do a couple more tweets and then we'll get on out of here. But Jay Lancaster, he said, is it okay to like all Chicago teams and want to see all Chicago teams win? I am more of a Sox fan, but I still want the Cubs to win all other games. So, it's admirable. Sometimes I find myself kind of rooting for the Sox. I know that's shock a lot of viewers, oh my gosh, the guy's been hating on L flags all day. But honestly, going into this season, I was very intrigued by the team the Sox were starting to put together with Tim Anderson, Luis Robert. Now I call him Robert. I know it's Luis Robert, but it was Barrelissimo. How you doing today? You threw me off there, but the White Sox have a lot of talent and they do intrigue me. So I do find myself sometimes rooting for them because I'd like to see both teams make the playoffs. It keeps the conversation interesting, but I do think you have to pick a side. And I like Sox fans' comment to it, and we'll leave it at this because there was a million different screenshots, but he said no to Jay Lancaster's question. He said, no, it's like the Civil War. Families were torn, brothers fighting brothers. Got to pick a side, pick a uniform, and put it on. It's war. God is watching you. The last part was my favorite. God is watching you. To be a little dramatic. Nothing like Chicago sports fans to be a little over dramatic about their teams. And, I am no stranger to that. So, that being said, that wraps it up for today. We hit the 2-hour mark, almost on the head. And surprised we made it this far, Jake. We've, we kind of threw this together this morning, with all the
last minute,
Sox and Cubs chatter, everybody getting excited about that. And then, of course, Bears training camp to talk about. Thought, why not? Come out, give it a test run. Don't be scared. Don't wait 2 weeks and then have all these fumbles and mishaps when we're,
fumbling and mishaping right now.
Yeah, exactly. Putting the grand, show out to start. We want to make sure we do this right. So we wanted to have a test run. So Chubbs, sticking with us the whole show.
Whole show. Thank you.
Chubbs, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Honestly, that's something like that means the world to me, and I know it does Jake too. We're trying to put as much work as we can into this. I've been extremely busy this summer, laying the bricks, working out in Monticello, Indiana the last 10 days, 2-hour drives there and back. But, trying to get all this facilitated here, as we, grind really close to the, edge of the wire of the start of the, regular season. So, really appreciate you guys hanging in there with us with all the little technical mishaps. Of course, I got to mute my mic a few times while I'm talking. I'm always good for a few screw-ups. So, again, Chubbs and everyone else in the chat, Salim, my mom, Barb, there we go. We got everybody. We got Goma. I'll tell you what, the giveaways were great, and my buddy over there won the Allen Robinson jersey. It took me seriously 2 weeks to get these, 3 weeks to get these jerseys out to people. But Omar Gomez, from the Chicago Police Department, they're doing a charity thing for a baseball tournament that to support. And I want to get it right, so I want to make sure I give this guy the proper shout out for his little charity baseball games.
Yeah, for sure.
The Chicago Fire Department and the Chicago Police Department Thursday, August 27th at 7 p.m. are having a baseball game, to have a little second annual First Responders Charity Baseball Classic. So, if you have time, tickets and donations are $10, and limited due to COVID, but you still can go to the game. I tweeted out the link. It'll be at Impact Field in Rosemont, Illinois. Again, August 27th, Thursday, 7 p.m. Make sure you check it out. Pre-game is at 6:30. Omar Gomez, from the Chicago Police Department. We appreciate you hanging out all night. And again, I appreciate you donating to the Versus Cancer Foundation that we did the giveaway for the Allen Robinson signed jersey. We're going to be doing a lot of fun giveaways on this show as we move forward. Hopefully tickets to games, if we ever have games, we can go to again, and signed jerseys, bobbleheads, and everything else in between. Like to give back to the fans, shirts, whatever we can do to try to give back to our listeners, because truly we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. So again, Omar Gomez, thank you for everything. And Jake, something you're going to learn about me, that I've always had a problem with is wrap ups. So I like to ramble when we get to the end, because I don't. Oh, you know
like
this.
to
When I'm
ramble?
on the phone with you, I don't know how to truly properly say goodbye.
Rambling man.
I'm
Absolutely.
the rambling man, and I always want to say the perfect ending, and I never know quite how to get
Well,
there.
hey, just say when the season starts, we're going to be giving you a weekly show. We're going to be bringing you some bringing some fantasy news, breaking down the weeks. All the
fun.
good stuff. We're after games, we'll be bringing you a breakdown of that. Hopefully, we have better endings than not.
That's the
Hopefully,
idea behind
we're
Brags.
happier than sad.
Exactly.
We'll
That's
see.
the Brags in the stands. We're going to be coming at you at any given moment. We're going to try to pick a day that we have,
We'll have
weekly
one
show.
solid show
But we want to go
after
live
shows.
whenever. If I'm at a game, maybe we'll go live then. If I'm at the tailgate, maybe we'll go live then. If we're just sitting around hanging out, maybe that's when we'll go live.
Chubbs is there. You go. That's the perfect sign off right there. Just
thank you,
cut it.
Chubbs. Bear Truth 9 from my days at Bears Barroom was my representation, as we called it. And Bear Truth 9 is forever in my corner, and he always tries to make sure, I'm doing everything on the up and up, saying the right things. He's going to help me with my draft breakdown next year, so we can keep our fans informed and make me sound like a smart draft expert, so I can beat out Bearlissimo. You'll get to meet Bearlissimo properly when we bring him on the show, but Bearlissimo is known for his mock drafts, and he's probably already got 30 made for next year, even though there won't be there might not be a college football season. He's got his mock drafts ready, and I'm ready. I'm ready to do my own mock drafts coming up next year, so Bear Truth Night's going to help me take those down. But, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to do a lot of different fun ideas. There'll be shows where, we'll just be bullshitting about TV shows and movies. It might not even be about sports. So, Brags in the Stands is just going to be about, having fun and showing that experience at the game and talking about the teams that we love here in Chicago and, some of the other teams of games that I go to, whether it's region basketball, honestly, Purdue basketball, Chicago sports is always going to lay in the forefront. Chicago Bears is always going to be front and center because this is a Chicago Bears town. But we're going to cover all sorts of fun stuff and give you, the full Greg Braggs experience, as some like to call it. And,
whether you want it or not, you're getting it.
Yeah, whether you want it or not. You get it on Twitter whether you like it or not. If you're coming here, you might kind of want it. So,
I hope so.
I appreciate that. Hey, some people hate watch. You feel free to hate watch. It's no problem. You either love me or hate me. It's very, very seldom is it in between. I'm a man of extremes, so you either love me or hate me. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
I'll tell you this much. I love Mitchell Trubisky, Jake, and this is how I'm going to sign off.
Sign off.
Mitchell Trubisky for Nick Foles 1, to be continued. And this was Brags in the Stands.
Thank you, guys.